Breathless. Forbidden, Book 2. Written by Susanna Thompson. Narrated by Lauren Sweet. Chapter 1. I already felt homesick, but I tried to absorb some of the excitement of the other students. Embracing my independence should have been as thrilling for me as it was for all the other freshmen here. We were free from parental rules and restrictions, and we had been let loose with thousands of other people our age to roam this huge campus. Boston University was everything that I had imagined college would be. I had moved into my dorm last week, so I had been able to acclimate myself before school began. My roommate seemed like a nice, considerate person, and I knew that made me lucky. I could have been placed with someone who wasn't so easy to live with. Logan was also going to college nearby, and that helped a lot to lessen my loneliness. My roommate, Cade, had stared at him like he was an actual movie star. She had assumed that he was my boyfriend, and she couldn't believe that I wasn't madly in love with him when I told her that we were just friends. "What are you looking for in a boyfriend?" she questioned incredulously. "He goes to Harvard and he looks like that? What more could you want?" My mouth compressed in bitter remembrance of my last boyfriend, but I kept my voice even when I spoke. "I'm not looking for a boyfriend. I enjoy being single." "Ah," she responded. "You're more into playing the field." I didn't correct her misconception. "Yeah, so many guys, so little time," I commented blithely. She laughed in delight. "I'm gonna live vicariously through you. I've been with my boyfriend since middle school, so I missed out on dating other guys." "Middle school?" I repeated incredulously. "Wow, that's—" I trailed off, at a loss to describe it. "I've never known anyone who's been together that long," I added with envy. "My friend has been with her boyfriend for 2 years, and they're still in high school, but they didn't get together until sophomore year." My mind drifted back to Morgan's crazy plan to use Blaine in her quest to get with Logan. She had been blindsided by the feeling she hadn't wanted to admit she had for Blaine. Sex had changed everything between them. She hadn't been able to walk away indifferently from him afterwards the way she had planned. They had been together ever since, and Morgan had found the happiness with him that she had hoped for with Logan. I was relieved that things had worked out for her after I had expected it all to end in disaster. She had become such a romantic optimist, though, and I was glad to get away from her matchmaking attempts. I knew that she just wanted me to be as happy as she was, but I had refused to date anyone after my breakup with Cade. "I'm focusing on me," I had insisted, using the one argument that she would have to agree with. "That's good," she had acknowledged. "You deserve to pamper yourself after everything you've been through, but you eventually— Do you want to go to the spa again this weekend?" I had cut in. "Or is Blaine giving you a massage?" I teased, making her blush while distracting her from my non-existent love life. I had embraced all the luxury that Cade had accused me of coveting. The first time I saw him again after he moved out of his dad's house had been on the family vacation Robert had promised us before he caught us together in Cade's bedroom. Robert took the precaution of sharing a room with him, but he needn't have bothered. There was no way I would be sneaking into Cade's room after the things he had said to me the last time I had seen him. I made a point of flaunting my expensive wardrobe and jewelry in his face, even going so far as to wear the Tahitian pearls his dad had bought me. It soured the sweet memory of the day I had received that necklace, but I wanted to ruin all my good memories of Cade so that I wouldn't yearn for him to be like that again. I could tell that seeing the necklace got to him, and I felt the satisfaction of taking a long, overdue jab at him. He recovered too quickly, though, as his lips curled into a sneer.
Did Logan buy out the jewelry store? I can't even tell which one is your engagement ring,
He said, gesturing toward the rings on my hands. You got engaged? Mom exclaimed. No, I answered, with the annoyance I was feeling toward Cade. I bought these myself.
Oh?
Cade inquired.
With your own money?
I smirked at him. With your dad's money. I rubbed it in.
It's good to see you showing your true colors,
He remarked with disdain.
I always knew you were a gold digger. Cade!
Robert reprimanded him sharply.
Apologize to Lexie. Why should I?
He retorted.
It's true. You will not speak to her that way.
Robert exploded.
Apologize or you're going back to...
No, I pleaded urgently. Just let it go, Robert, please. Don't let him ruin our vacation. I've never been on vacation before. Please, let me enjoy it.
But he doesn't have to be...
I interrupted Robert with a plea that overrode common sense. Don't send him away because of me. I don't care what he says about me. I just want to enjoy our vacation.
One more comment like that,
Robert warned Cade.
and you'll be on the next plane to California.
It seemed that Cade didn't want to miss out on this family vacation because he didn't make any more disparaging remarks to me within earshot of our parents. He probably missed spending time with his dad. I attributed my own contrary desire to have him on this trip with us to my wish to aggravate him while I had the chance. There was nothing more to it than that. I had no other reason for wanting to see him. All that remained of our brief relationship was antagonism toward each other, but it didn't detract from my excitement over this trip to Florida. Robert had let me choose the location, and I had decided on something closer to home rather than a tropical island in deference to Mom's condition. Her morning sickness had abated, but she was 4 months pregnant. Her doctor had assured her that she was fine to travel wherever she wanted, but I didn't want to take any chances. Robert had been surprised that I chose Florida over Hawaii or the Caribbean. I had reminded him that I had never been anywhere, so Florida was paradise to me. It turned out not to be an exaggeration. The hotel we were staying at was insanely luxurious. We had a 3-bedroom suite that was 2 levels with stairs, like in a house. Not a grand staircase like in Robert's house, but we had an upstairs in our hotel room. We also had a real kitchen that we weren't using because we were eating at exclusive restaurants where I had spotted a celebrity. Our opulent bathroom had a jacuzzi tub, a separate shower, and dual vanities. The suite had 3 big screen TVs, floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room overlooking the beach, and a dining table that could seat 8 people. Having become accustomed to living in a huge mansion, this hotel shouldn't have impressed me as much as it did. But I gaped in astonishment when we first entered the suite. I blinked at Robert when I realized that he was calling my name.
Lexie,
He repeated again.
your mom wants you to decide which room you want.
Oh, I responded as I came out of my daze. Okay. As Robert turned in expectation that I would follow him, I noticed Cade watching me with an unreadable expression. In that instant, I forgot everything else as I got lost in his dark gaze. I stared back at him until his dad's voice snapped me out of it. I'm coming, I called back. When my attention turned back to Cade, he had an angry look on his face.
Don't try any of your tricks,
He warned.
You better not make my dad get pissed off at me again,
He said as he crossed the distance between us. I didn't plan any of that, I retorted. So,
I'm coming,
he interjected in an imitation of someone about to reach sexual climax. My face flamed at the sound of the moan in his voice. I didn't say it that way, I argued.
Lexie,
I jumped at hearing Robert's voice sounding closer and hurried to him so that he wouldn't catch me with Cade. Not that we were doing anything besides talking, but I still hadn't completely recovered from the shame of Robert seeing me topless in Cade's bed. Only the light of the TV screen had illuminated us, and Cade had quickly blocked me from view, but it was mortifying to be seen like that by my stepfather. He had blamed the entire thing on Cade and never said another word to me about it. Robert had continued to treat me like a daughter, and it was only my own embarrassment that had made me feel awkward around him for a while. I didn't see him that much anyway, since he spent so much time at work. At first, I thought that he was avoiding me after what happened, but his cook, Lauren, had made a comment to Mom about Robert returning to his workaholic ways. Mom had lamented about him being late for dinner again. "Don't wait for him," Lauren advised. "Cade never did, and you're pregnant, so you shouldn't wait so long between meals." Her words made me imagine Cade eating dinner by himself every day, but that wasn't so different from me when my mom was working 2 jobs. Her shifts as a waitress varied, but I often ate dinner alone. I wasn't going to make excuses for Cade's behavior, although I did wonder why he was so heartless sometimes. If only that cold heart wasn't encased in such a beautiful body. If only I didn't still fantasize about alternate scenarios in which Cade hadn't been such an asshole to me. Even during that vacation, my mind was playing out scenes in which we were still a happy couple, enjoying the gorgeous white sand beach together. I imagined holding hands like the young couple I had seen walking barefoot along the shore. After stealing glances at Cade in his swim trunks on the beach and at the pool during the day, my fantasies about him became much more erotic when I was alone at night. I had caught him looking at me too, his eyes skimming down my bikini-clad body, and that also played out in my fantasy. Robert was sharing the master bedroom with Cade in order to keep tabs on him at night, but I wouldn't welcome him into my room anyway after the things he had said to me when he had been forced to move to his mom's house. My mom wasn't sharing a room with me because Robert wanted her to be comfortable in the queen-size bed in her room since she was pregnant. I would rather have died than be caught in a compromising situation with Cade again, but that didn't prevent me from imagining making out with him. When I saw him again for the first time after our angry parting, I had been dismayed to realize that there was still an attraction between us. I had always been attracted to him, even when I had hated him, but now I knew that his antagonism toward me masked his own unwanted physical attraction to me. My plan to be cold and indifferent toward him had immediately proved impossible for me to pull off. Yet he also hadn't ignored me either. By the last day of our vacation, the tension between us was so thick that my awareness of him was stronger than it had ever been. Nothing could distract me from his presence in my vicinity, even when I wasn't looking at him.
So, how's school?
He asked in an unexpectedly polite tone. I glanced at him in surprise. It's good. How's how's school for you?" I stammered. In, um, California,"
It's okay.
he replied.
We've got a good team, but I'm not on it.
He added with the beginning of a scowl.
You'll be on it next year.
Robert assured him confidently.
You made me let down my team.
Cade retorted angrily.
If they don't win the championship, you let down your family.
His dad told him. "Robert," Mom exclaimed, while I reeled in shock from his harshness toward his son. "That's a terrible thing to say," she continued in outrage. "It's not true," she spoke kindly to Cade. "You and Lexie just made a mistake. We've gotten past it, and everything will be fine."
Yes,
He agreed, adopting that polite tone again.
You've gotten me out of the way so that Lexie can marry Logan, and you can all live happily ever after.
You're an idiot! I exploded as I stood up out of my chair in my agitation. I told you we're just friends. He doesn't even want to ever get married. But if he did, he would marry Julia because she's his Marion. And even Morgan finally realized it. But you're too stubborn to listen to anybody, and I don't even care what you think anyway. The murmurs around me made me remember that we were in a fancy restaurant, and I had just made a scene. I slowly sat back down as heat flared in my cheeks while Cade smirked at me.
His Marianne?
He inquired.
What does that mean exactly?
Marion, I corrected him. It's from Indiana Jones.
Ah,
He responded in comprehension. Who is Julia? Mom questioned. A girl in my grade, I replied. She's really popular and she's a musical prodigy. Logan is in love with her.
he told you that?
Cade asked skeptically. He implied it, I said.
Which means you assumed it.
He stated with a wry smile. It's true, I insisted. I know he's in love with her.
Just like you knew that he liked Morgan.
He commented dryly. He does like her, just not in the way I thought, I admitted.
Yeah, people can get the wrong idea sometimes.
He agreed, his gaze dropping down to his plate. Have you made friends at your new school? Mom asked him in concern. He lifted his eyes to study her.
A few.
He answered vaguely. She appeared to be unsure if he was just saying that, or if he really had made friends. Oh, what are they like?
They're fake and shallow. But, you know, money talks, so they pretend to like me.
I bristled at his underhanded dig at me, but Mom looked genuinely troubled by his answer. You'll find real friends once you get to know more people, she told him. Try talking to people who aren't in that clique. He was watching her so closely that I could tell he was trying to read her. It should have been easy for him, because my mom was an open book. But he didn't trust her, so he didn't believe that she was genuine.
You're an athlete,
Robert commented.
you'll have no trouble making friends.
Common interests can help, Mom agreed. But it's not always easy to make close friends you can confide in.
What does he have to confide?
Robert asked dismissively.
He's a normal kid. He doesn't have anything to hide from anyone.
I'm talking about his feelings, Mom said. Adolescent angst.
That's what girls talk about.
Robert said.
Guys talk about sports and girls.
Guys have feelings too, Mom argued. Everyone needs someone to confide in.
Who do you confide in?
Cade asked her. She looked distinctly uncomfortable as her gaze slid away from him while she speared a piece of asparagus with her fork. Well, friends, she replied uncertainly. And your father, of course. And I've always had a diary, too. Cade appeared to be startled by that.
A diary.
He stated with a bewildered expression. Mom blushed in embarrassment. I know it sounds silly for someone my age to keep a diary, but I find it helps me to organize my thoughts. And you can write down wonderful memories, too, she rushed on. Do you have a diary from when you met Dad? I asked excitedly. Now I was suddenly the one making her uncomfortable as her gaze slid away from me. I'm not sure. It's been so long since I looked at my old diaries. I might have lost some of them when we moved.
Do you have a diary, Lexie?
Cade questioned me. No, I answered distractedly, my focus still on Mom. See if you can find it when we get back. I can't believe you never told me about this before. You know how much I love to hear about Dad. I'll look for it, she promised, still seeming uncomfortable talking about it. I guessed that she probably didn't want to talk about my dad too much in front of Robert, so I dropped the subject. Well, Cade changed the subject.
Who do you confide in, Lexie?
He asked me. Morgan, I replied. You, I added silently as I looked at him, until you turned on me for no reason.
Morgan is a nice girl,
Robert said.
as I recall. Cade dated her sister. What happened with that?
He asked Cade.
She turned out to be selfish and shallow,
He replied. Sounds like you're perfect for each other, I remarked. Lexie, please, Mom pleaded, but Robert laughed.
I told you she'd bounce back,
He told her.
Cade, you need to follow Lexie's example and stop moping. Yeah, but she wasn't kicked out of her house,
He retorted.
I could have sent you to military school,
Robert reminded him.
You were lucky to be able to move in with your mother.
You don't like living with her? Mom asked anxiously.
Mom's not the problem,
Cade answered.
I just didn't think it was fair for me to take all the blame.
He's right, Mom told Robert. Lexie was just as much at fault as...
Lexie is an innocent girl,
Robert said obstinately.
You said yourself that you never had any problems with her, whereas Cade, she's not that innocent.
Cade cut in. Robert's eyes narrowed at him. His voice was tight with anger.
Did you?
He couldn't seem to ask the question.
I'm not the one who took her virginity,
Cade relished telling him. Mom and Robert both stared at me as heat suffused my face, and I felt like I might pass out from shame. I couldn't look at them, and I dropped my gaze to my plate as I wished that I could disappear from their view. I realized that my reaction had confirmed the truth of Cade's words, but I hadn't been prepared for him to reveal something like that to our parents.
I guess she didn't confide that to you,
Cade taunted. I couldn't take any more, so I shot up out of my chair and nearly collided with a waiter as I ran for the exit. The intensity of my humiliation was out of proportion to what the situation warranted. I actually felt worse than when I had been caught in bed with Cade, but it took me a while to figure out why. So Robert's illusions about my innocence had been destroyed, and my mom knew that I'd had sex. She couldn't exactly throw stones at me when she had done the same thing at my age. I wasn't thrilled about disappointing them, but that wasn't why I was so upset. It was because Cade had made me feel like a fool. I'd been lulled into thinking that we had both agreed on a truce during this vacation. We didn't like each other anymore, but it hadn't felt like we hated each other either. We had even been having a civil conversation before his abrupt betrayal. Cade caught up to me on the sidewalk.
Where are you going? You can't walk to the hotel from here.
Leave me alone, I demanded, without slowing my angry pace.
Don't make them come chasing after you,
he said as he matched his stride to mine.
They're waiting for you in the car.
I'm not going anywhere with you, I retorted. I should have let your dad send you back to California. I can't believe I talked him into letting you stay.
Why did you?
He asked. I must have forgotten what an asshole you are, I said bitterly. Thanks for reminding me. But that was low, even for you.
I got sick of my dad treating me like the bad guy while thinking you're some kind of angel,
he said. Well, the next time I want to make myself look better, I'll tell him how you got your ex-girlfriend pregnant, I retorted.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't have said anything about your virginity,
he acknowledged.
Listen, I've had some time to cool down, and I want to hear the truth from you,
he told me. Oh, now you want to talk to me, I retorted sarcastically. I haven't heard a word from you in 2 months. You said all those awful things to me and dropped me just like that. It's a little late to talk now. I don't care about your apology anymore.
I wasn't apologizing,
he stated.
You can't blame me for thinking that you set me up. Think about how it looks to me. You come into my room and start having sex with me, and the next thing I know, your mom's got my dad barging in on us.
I didn't know she'd come looking for me in the middle of the night, I replied in exasperation. And I didn't come there to have sex with you. I just wanted to talk. You're the one who started kissing me.
You kissed me back,
he reminded me.
and you didn't say anything about wanting to talk.
I got carried away, I admitted. I forgot why I was there. He smirked at me in response.
I told you that you wouldn't want to stop. I can tell that you still want me.
He added, his voice becoming seductive as he stepped closer.
I've seen the way you look at me. You think about that night a lot, don't you, Lexie? About finishing what we started.
He wasn't wrong. I did often imagine a different conclusion to that night, one in which we weren't interrupted by our parents. Yet that wasn't something I was going to admit to him after how he had treated me. I hardened my voice as I answered him. You're the one who finished what we started, Cade.
Yeah, maybe I overreacted.
He allowed, in the unconcerned tone of one who had made a minor mistake.
It just really sucks that we got caught. But I'll get my mom to work on my dad about letting me move back home.
If that's what you want to do, I said. But don't bother because of me,
But that's what you begged me to do.
he exclaimed in consternation. Before you called me and my mom pros, I replied bitterly. You showed me how much you cared about me,
I thought you were playing me.
he said in a defensive tone.
You still could be, for all I know.
I'm not doing anything to you, I told him. We're done. His eyes narrowed at me.
You've got a new guy?
He demanded. I almost rolled my eyes, but annoyance made me snap at him instead. Yes, I sure do.
Who is he?
He questioned angrily.
Cade, Lexie, get in the car now.
Robert shouted, his voice firing at us from the direction of the curb. I immediately obeyed, simply because it meant walking away from Cade. He followed me, of course, and sat beside me on the back seat. I ignored him, and Robert quickly stopped his interrogation of me.
Shut up, Cade,
He snapped, sounding like his patience had completely run out.
Leave Lexie alone, or you'll never go on vacation with us again. It's not like I'm part of this family anymore anyway,
Cade grumbled. Of course you're part of this family, Mom assured him as she turned to look at him. I deliberately sat behind her so that I wouldn't be in her line of sight unless she completely turned around in her seat to look at me. Robert had to keep his eyes on the road since he was driving, so there was less awkwardness for me in his line of sight. I had also guessed correctly that he would avoid turning to look at me. This situation was just as awkward for him, but it seemed like he was more upset with Cade than me. My mom hadn't said anything to me either, but I knew that she would as soon as we were alone. When we had discussed what had happened between Cade and me, I had told her that we hadn't had sex. She had probably assumed that I was still a virgin, but now she knew that I wasn't. It was something that she would want to talk about, and I wasn't looking forward to it. At the moment, her focus was on Cade. You'll always be part of this family, she told him. Nothing will ever change that. He looked at her with a pensive expression.
Do you really mean that?
Yes, she exclaimed. We are your family, Cade. Your family has expanded, but you're still an important part of it. Your baby brother is going to need you to—
Brother?
Cade interrupted her.
It's a boy?
Yes, she answered with a glance toward Robert. He glanced back at her before returning his attention to the road.
I forgot to call and tell him.
How could you forget? She demanded, sounding angry.
I had a lot to get done at work before this vacation.
He replied. Then you should have told me to call him, she admonished him. He shouldn't be the last one to know.
It's only been 2 weeks since we found out,
Robert retorted. You should have told him, she insisted. From now on, I'll keep him updated on everything.
Thanks, because Dad would forget to tell me that the baby was born,
Cade remarked. He remained moody, but silent after that. I escaped to my room as soon as we got back to the hotel. But Mom came in to have that private talk I was dreading. "When did it happen?" she asked. "It was when I was with Lucas," I answered. "And he's the only guy I've been with, so you don't need to—" "Lucas?" she cut in. "He was your first boyfriend. You were only 15. Would you stop yelling?" I pleaded. "I don't want everyone to know how stupid I was." "I didn't say you were stupid, but I thought I loved him," I interjected, my own voice raising in agitation. "I thought he liked me too, but it was a bet. He made a bet that he could sleep with me, and then he dumped me after he did." "Oh, Lexie," she said. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." "It was really romantic and special," I told her, with all the bitterness I still felt about it. "There were rose petals and balloons." There was anguish in her expression as I spoke, but I only felt anger. "Lucas Klein really knows how to act like a gentleman, and I was stupid enough to fall for it." I left out the part that really burned me, that I had thought I had found a love like she had with my dad. "I'm so sorry," she repeated. "I wish you would have talked to me about it. You weren't stupid, Lexie, but you were naive and foolish. Lucas was very charming," she acknowledged. "So I understand how he fooled you. That's why you should wait until you really get to know someone before—" She apparently couldn't speak aloud what I had done. "I waited 3 months before I had sex with him," I said, making her wince. "What is the safe amount of time to wait so you know he's not an asshole?" I pressed her. "Your wedding day?" she responded with a hopeful expression. I snorted. "You were in high school when you had me, and I've done the math with this pregnancy. You got pregnant before your wedding day." Her face flushed in embarrassment, but her direct gaze didn't waver from mine. "I know that I haven't set a good example for you." "No," I fervently interrupted her. "That's not what I meant. I know you didn't date anyone for years after Dad died."
Cade,
We heard Robert yelling outside my door.
what the hell are you doing? Get away from there!
Mom rushed to open the door, and I was right behind her. We saw Cade standing so close to the doorway that it was obvious he had been eavesdropping on us. He had only half turned to face Robert, who looked furious. "What's going on?" Mom asked unnecessarily.
What are you doing?
Robert demanded of Cade.
Sarah said that I'm part of this family.
Cade answered him. "So you're spying on us?" I questioned angrily. I was mortified to think that he might have heard how easily Lucas had tricked me. He turned to look at me, his expression hard rather than mocking.
If anyone messes with you, you tell me, Lexie.
"Nobody is messing with me," I replied in confusion.
Is everything all right?
Robert asked. "Everything's fine," Mom answered him.
You heard her, Cade.
Robert said.
Give them some privacy and go pack your things. We've got early flights in the morning.
From the rigid set of his jaw, I expected Cade to argue.
Okay.
He agreed, to my surprise, beginning to walk away obediently before turning back to face us.
It was good to see you again, Sarah. Thanks for letting me go on vacation with you.
"Oh," Mom replied. "Of course we wanted you to come with us,"
I know it was you who got him to let me come.
he told her.
Thank you.
I stared at him as I watched him show what appeared to be genuine respect and gratitude toward my mom. He had been polite to her before to her face, while saying mean things about her behind her back. But there was now a gravity to his demeanor toward her that I had never seen before. "Your father wanted you to come too?" she insisted uncomfortably, looking toward Robert for help.
Of course, son.
He agreed gruffly.
You threatened to send me back on the first day.
Cade reminded him.
If you would behave yourself, then—
"Never mind," Cade interrupted him.
That's over now. I need to talk to Lexie for a minute. Cade,
Robert said his name like a warning.
Just to talk.
Cade stressed. On the balcony, Mom ordered. We'll be watching you from inside. She added to my embarrassment, like I would have sex with him out on the balcony where people could see us. I don't want to talk to him, I argued.
Lexie, please.
Cade begged.
I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure which of his many transgressions he was apologizing for, but I didn't care. I have nothing to say to you, I huffed.
Please.
He begged again.
I have something to say to you.
Let him talk to you for a minute, Mom urged. We're leaving in the morning. I relented to her reminder that he would be out of my face soon. Okay, just for a minute. I strode toward the balcony, and Cade pulled the door open for me before following me out. He slid it closed again as I turned to face him impatiently. He smirked at me to my further annoyance.
I'm surprised you don't have a stopwatch set to 1 minute,
He remarked. Just say what you dragged me out here to say, I snapped.
I'm sorry.
He responded in a sincere tone with a sincere expression. I snorted. Great. Now everything's forgiven.
You have a right to be mad,
He said.
but you promised not to give up on me.
You're the one who gave up on me, I retorted.
I was wrong,
He replied. Yes, you were, I told him as I stared him down.
Lexie.
He began, his expression softening.
We have something special.
Yeah, what you said to me was special, I replied sarcastically.
I told you I'm sorry,
He said in an impatient tone.
What more do you want from me?
Nothing, I said. I don't want anything from you. You said what you wanted to say, and now we're done. I turned to walk back inside, but the urgent tone in his voice stopped me.
Wait,
He pleaded.
you can't say we have nothing. You know it's not over. Don't try to tell me you don't feel it too, because I know you still feel this connection between us.
We had one date, I countered. We never even got to go on a second one before you accused me of faking my feelings for you. A smile turned his expression playful.
So you admit you have feelings for me.
I refused to be charmed by him. Had, I told him. I liked you, but now I don't anymore.
You're lying,
He declared.
You begged my dad to let me stay here. You wouldn't have done that if you didn't like being around me. I know you miss what we had, and I do too.
We had one date, I reiterated. There's nothing to—
But it was a perfect date,
he interjected. I've had perfect dates before, I retorted. It doesn't mean anything.
Rose petals and balloons,
He said darkly, confirming my suspicions that he had overheard me talking about Lucas.
That asshole is gonna pay.
His threatening proclamation startled me. What?
Nothing,
He replied.
Let's just forget everything else and get back to where we left off. I won't let anything ruin it for us again.
You ruined it, I reminded him. Yeah, your dad sent you to live with your mom, but you broke up with me. That's where we left off, so there's nothing to get back to.
I want to get back together,
He told me. Well, I don't, I said. I'm not going to deal with you going hot and cold on me. I knew what you were like, and I still made the mistake of going out with you. Well, I learned my lesson, and I am not going to make that mistake again.
It's not a mistake,
He insisted in sudden anger.
You're just being—
My own anger flared, and I forcefully cut him off. What? A bitch? This is exactly what I mean. 1 minute you're asking me to get back together with you, and the next you're calling me a—
I didn't call you anything.
He interrupted me in exasperation.
I was saying that you're being stubborn. You won't admit that you want to be with me because you're still mad about—
Be with you? I cut him off again. Let's be realistic, Cade. We don't even live in the same state anymore, not to mention that you're my stepbrother. It was never going to work out anyway, but I just hate the way you ended it. We could have at least still been friends, but you had to ruin any chance of that." He stepped so close to me that he was completely in my personal space.
"We could never be just friends, Lexie."
He said, before the sound of the balcony door being whooshed open announced the hasty arrival of my mom. "What are you doing?" she asked in an accusatory tone.
"Talking."
Cade replied, as I moved away from him and toward my mom. "We're done," I announced, meaning it in more ways than one.
"For now."
Cade said. "Forever," I retorted.
"That's realistic."
He remarked dryly. He got the last word, because I had no good comeback to that. In an attempt to avoid him for the rest of the evening, I opted to take my shower last. Since I assumed that everyone would stay in their rooms for the rest of the night, I stepped out of the bathroom dressed only in the luxurious white robe provided by the hotel. I halted at the sight of Cade leaning against the wall in front of me. My pulse jumped from more than being startled by his unexpected presence. His heated stare was the same one I remembered from that night in his room. It brought back the memory of those kisses and the feel of his skin against mine. He pushed himself forward off the wall, and my heart beat faster as he came closer. My awareness of my nakedness beneath the robe spiked with his nearness. It didn't help that he was shirtless. "What are you doing?" I demanded in a breathless voice that betrayed the effect he was having on me.
"We're not done,"
he said, his own voice sounding unsteady with desire as he reached out to lift the soft belt hanging from my waist. His gaze moved back up to my face.
"I can't stop thinking about you, Lexie."
I was expecting Robert to interrupt us in the next instant, but he didn't. I guessed that he was asleep, and that Cade had managed to sneak out of their room to come down here with me. It was like a scenario from one of my perfect vacation fantasies involving Cade, and I probably would have let it play out if we were still together. Maybe even if we weren't, had our breakup been amicable. But it hadn't. Cade had hurt me, and I wasn't going to let him do it again. He changed his opinion of me too easily for me to be able to trust him. It also wasn't worth taking the chance of losing Robert's and my mother's respect over a guy who had treated me like I meant nothing to him. As he leaned in to kiss me, I sidestepped him. "Leave me alone," I said, and hurried away from him.
"You want me too."
He insisted as he followed me. I stopped at the entrance to my room and turned to face him. "Leave me alone or I'll tell Robert. He'll send you to military school." His determined expression changed to disbelief.
"You'd do that to me?"
"Only if you don't stop trying to." I gestured toward his bare chest instead of finishing my sentence.
"Tempt you?"
He suggested with a smirk. I fixed a hard gaze on him. "We are done." It was an imitation of his cold attitude toward his ex-girlfriend, and it worked on him. All traces of humor vanished from his face. He stared at me before his expression became unreadable as he settled his features into an impassive mask.
"That's how you're going to play it?"
He inquired in a neutral tone. His ease of changing moods was hard to copy, and frustration cracked my icy demeanor. "It's not a game, Cade. This is impossible, and you're impossible. I can't do this."
"But you want to."
He pressed, his emotionless expression dissolving into eagerness. "No!" I answered in exasperation. "I can't deal with you, Cade. You're not going to jerk me around and use me whenever you feel like it. I'm not falling for this again."
"You want proof?"
he asked.
"I'll show you that I mean it."
"Show me what?" I asked warily.
"You'll see."
he promised.
"Good night, Lexie. I'm going to go dream about you until I can have you for real."
His gaze intensified as he spoke, and his eyes traveled the length of me and back up to my face before he sighed and left me standing there all hot and bothered. As I went into my room and closed the door, I was imagining him taking off my robe and looking at me with that heated gaze. Even after I went to bed, I was still longing for him to kiss me. It was so different seeing him in the morning. He was polite but distant, like he hadn't been trying to get me naked last night. It confirmed what I had said about him using me whenever he felt like it, but it hurt to feel like I had been tossed aside again. I was so glad that I had stuck to my resolve and not given in to temptation this time. At least I had been able to walk away with more dignity than I had with Lucas. Lucas, however, would have difficulty walking for a while. I received a newspaper clipping about him a month after the vacation in Florida. There was no return address on the envelope, and nothing inside it except the brief article from my hometown paper about the attack on Lucas Klein. His assailant had been wearing a ski mask and had broken Lucas's leg while beating him up. He was believed to have martial arts training, but the police had no motive for the attack. Nothing had been stolen, and the assailant hadn't spoken a word to Lucas. After staring at the article in shock, I called Cade. I still hadn't deleted his number from my contacts. "Did you do this?" I asked after he answered the phone.
Do what?
He questioned. "This," I emphasized by motioning with the article I had clutched in my left hand like he could see me. "Did you beat up Lucas?"
Who's Lucas?
He asked. "Rose petals and balloons," I said. "I know you heard me talking to my mom. Did you break his leg?"
I don't know what you're talking about.
He replied smoothly. "This is crazy," I exclaimed in agitation. "You could be arrested."
So you only care about me getting arrested.
He remarked.
Not about this person.
"You can't go beating people up," I exploded.
Lexie,
He said, his voice so warm and soothing that it took the edge off my frazzled nerves.
I'm waiting for you, Lexie. I'm waiting until we can be together in college. Promise me you won't date anyone else either.
I felt weakened after the adrenaline rush of panic I had just experienced. "Did you steal my mom's diaries?" I questioned in a seemingly random way, but it was all connected in my now crazily tilted world.
Your mom's diaries were stolen?
He inquired. "Cade," I pleaded, "what are you doing?"
Don't worry. I'll fix everything.
He promised.
Just wait for me, Lexie.
I had no intention of waiting for him, even after my mom's diaries were returned as mysteriously as they had disappeared. My suspicions that Cade had been the one to take them were confirmed in my mind when he showed a warmth toward her that he never had before. Apparently, he now knew that she wasn't a gold digger just after his dad's money. His methods were still wrong, and I resolved not to be drawn into his web again. His visits to see his dad became more about spending time with the baby brother he obviously adored as much as I did. Noah had my mom's blue eyes, and he was the cutest thing I had ever seen. It was easy to share the joy of him with Cade, and the happiness Noah brought into the house erased any concerns I'd had about Cade's visits. There was no tension between us, and he didn't try to be alone with me. The Lucas incident faded from my mind as time passed, and I heard nothing else about it. I still thought that Cade was responsible for it, but I had no proof. If he thought that he could prove he cared about me by beating up my ex-boyfriend or paying someone else to do it, as he had most likely paid someone to steal my mom's diaries, he was wrong. All it proved to me was that he thought he could get away with anything. It sure didn't make me trust him. But I let it go, since he wasn't that big of a part of my life anymore. My life at home with my mom, Robert, and my baby brother was wonderful. School was hard, but I strived to do my best and put in more effort than I ever had before. It paid off, and I got accepted to Boston University and could go to college near Logan. Robert had argued that I should be at Harvard Business School if I was majoring in business, but I had refused to even consider it. I hadn't wanted him to pull any strings to get me into Harvard. I hadn't mentioned Boston when I listed the colleges I was planning to apply to, so I was sure that I had gotten in on my own merit. Robert was paying my tuition, but at least I felt like I had earned my place there. I had no idea where Cade was going to college until I saw him at Boston. When I answered the knocking on my dorm door after my first day of classes, I was at first only surprised to see Cade. "What are you doing here?"
I live here.
he replied. "You... what?" I asked in dismay.
3 floors up, he clarified. Why didn't you let Dad get you one of the suite dorms? You could have had your own room.
"You go here?" I exclaimed. "Why?" Robert had mentioned that Catherine had opted to pay Cade's tuition, and I had assumed that he was going to college in California. It had never crossed my mind that we might end up at the same college. We had never discussed it at all in the past 2 years of seeing each other during his visits home.
I told you we could be together in college,
He said.
I've waited for you, Lexie. And Morgan told me that you've waited for me, too.
"Morgan?" I exclaimed in disbelief. "She knew about this? I can't believe her."
Don't be mad at her, he pleaded. She just wants you to be happy. She told me how you refused to go out with anyone else. I haven't either, Lexie. I've been waiting for the day when we could be together again.
"That wasn't because of you," I declared. "I just didn't want to go out with another asshole. I wasn't waiting for you."
Lexie,
He chided me.
we're adults now. Stop playing games and admit the truth.
"Here's the truth," I retorted angrily. "My life doesn't revolve around you. I moved on a long time ago. I'm sorry if you didn't, but that's not my problem. If you would have told me about your stupid plan to follow me here, I would have told you not to bother." Irritation crept into his expression, but his tone was smooth when he spoke.
I've heard this from you before, Lexie. From the first time we talked, you acted like you couldn't stand me. But that wasn't the truth.
"It was," I insisted. "My first impression of you was the right one." Even as I spoke the words, I knew they weren't entirely true. Cade did have some good qualities, although he wasn't the best choice for a boyfriend. I almost faltered when I saw his hurt expression, but it was quickly replaced by a smug smirk. Besides, he had said worse to me, I reminded myself.
Well,
He said.
since your body always likes me before you do, I'll have to start there.
I ignored the little thrill that shot through me and scoffed at him. "Get over yourself." "I have," I taunted. He smiled with the confidence of a guy who knew how attractive he was.
You can be over me, under me, all over me. It all sounds good.
I rolled my eyes. "That's the best you've got?" He grinned at me. "What?" I demanded.
You're flirting with me.
He said. A movement behind him caught my eye, and I saw my roommate turning back to the direction she had come from. "Katie," I called out to her. She stopped and half turned toward me. "Oh, I'll come back later." "No," I exclaimed. "Stay. He was just leaving."
Hi, I'm Cade.
He introduced himself to her as she stood uncertainly several feet away from us. "Hi," she responded, finally coming closer. "I'm Katie,"
It's very nice to meet you.
he said.
You're Lexie's roommate?
"Yes," she replied. "It's very nice to meet you, too." "No, it isn't," I said. "Go away now, Cade. Don't come back."
Don't be jealous.
He admonished me.
Katie won't try to steal me away from you.
Oh, she exclaimed in dismay. I would never. Don't listen to a word he says, I told her. He's an idiot. Her disconcerted gaze flitted from me to Cade and back again. I just remembered that I need to uh, to go away, Cade. I snapped loudly at him. You're not chasing away my roommate.
Okay,
He agreed in amusement.
you can come up to my room instead. I'll kick out my roommate for you.
Go, I commanded as I raised my arm and stabbed my finger at him for emphasis.
You don't want to come?
He asked, his tone and expression making the innuendo clear. Katie blushed in embarrassment, and I glared at Cade.
Another time, then,
He said with a smirk, before finally leaving. But he was still in the building, and on my mind. And he would be here at this university with me for the next 4 years. I grabbed my phone to call Morgan and vent my frustration on her. I was now too riled up to feel lonely, but I certainly wasn't happy about this situation. She was going to get an earful from me. Cade, however, was going to get nothing from me. He was expecting this to be as easy for him as it had been before, but I wasn't going to let him burn me twice. Chapter 2. Cade was actually in several of my classes, since he was also majoring in business. I just hadn't noticed him that first day due to the large class sizes. He had chosen not to approach me until he showed up at my dorm, but he sat right beside me on the second day of classes. I thought about moving to another seat, but I had a feeling that he would follow me. I didn't want to play that immature game, so I decided to not react to him at all. He would eventually have to give up when he realized that he had no chance with me. Also, I could already see a few girls in this class checking him out. With thousands of female students on campus, he was sure to have an endless supply of hookups. I didn't believe that he would go without sex and wait for me to get back together with him. I also didn't believe that he hadn't been with anyone since we broke up. Not that I cared. He was free to do what he wanted. Like flirt with the pretty girl who had gotten out of her original seat to come sit beside him. Hi, she greeted him. I'm Jessica.
Hi,
He replied.
I'm Cade.
The lecture's about to start, she said quickly. But would you like to get coffee with me after class?
Do you want to go for coffee, Lexie?
He asked me. No, I answered. You go ahead.
Sorry, but I can't go without my girlfriend.
He told Jessica. I am not your girlfriend, I protested in annoyance.
Hello, class, the teacher said. I'm Professor Mackey. Welcome to Introductory Microeconomics.
I turned all my attention to the professor since I was determined to earn good grades in all my classes. My education was my #1 priority right now, and nobody was going to distract me from it. I had become an excellent student while tackling the tough curriculum at the private high school I had attended for the past 2 years. Having a genius best friend also helped. I could always ask Logan for help with my homework if I needed to, although I tried to figure it out on my own first. Eventually, I no longer had to call him for academic help. I still felt closer to him than I did to any of my other friends. The emotional upheaval that Morgan had experienced when she slept with Blaine had distracted her to a degree that had left her very little attention to focus on me, although she tried. I could tell, though, that her mind wasn't really on me when we talked. Since she also shied away from confiding her feelings about Blaine to me, as she was still trying to deny them, that left us only superficial things to talk about. We mostly did a bunch of group stuff with her other friends to avoid talking about things we didn't want to talk about. Once she finally admitted to herself how she felt about Blaine, She then got caught up in that new couple euphoria and spent most of her time with him. In the meantime, I took comfort in my easy connection with Logan. He wasn't kidding about being a nerd who sometimes got obsessed with researching something that caught his interest. He always welcomed me over, though, and he never made me feel like I was bothering him. It was different than being around Morgan while she was distracted by her unspoken turmoil over Blaine. Being with Logan while he was concentrating on his research was soothing. He was completely absorbed in his task rather than distracted because he was stressed. There was no underlying tension or distress. It was just complete mental focus on what interested him. There was something about being around him when he was in that state that was very calming for me. Julia, however, found it arousing. The first time that happened in my presence, I witnessed more than I would have ever wanted to, due to at first not realizing what was going on. Logan didn't even turn from his computer screen when the girl walked into his room without knocking. Her gaze flitted from him to me. Hi, Julia, I said when no one else spoke. Have you tried to break his concentration? She inquired. No, I responded in bewilderment. I'm just studying. I gestured to the textbook in my lap. For some reason, Logan's intense focus seemed to encourage my own. She regarded me in amusement. You're actually studying. How quaint. Um, I'm Lexie, I reminded her, since Logan still hadn't acknowledged her. Instead of replying, she appeared to entirely lose interest in me as she sat down beside me on the settee and watched Logan. The situation was too awkward for me to be able to continue studying, but Logan was still completely absorbed in his research. Julia seemed to savor watching him obsessively reading the articles on his computer screen. I couldn't understand what she found so fascinating about it, but her gaze remained locked on him. Despite the fact that I knew how much he liked her, she had apparently chosen the wrong time to come over. He had done nothing but ignore her, and I wasn't sure that he was even aware of her presence in the room. I felt bad for her and tried to think of a way to engage her in conversation, but she didn't even glance at me again. Maybe she had forgotten I was there. I gradually became aware that the atmosphere in the room had changed. It had become thick with tension, and I realized that it was emanating from Julia. She had crossed her legs in an unconsciously feminine gesture, but the effect wasn't the same as when a girl was wearing a skirt. Julia was dressed in slim black slacks and a cream cashmere sweater. I felt so comfortable with Logan that I had come over in my sweatpants. Julia looked effortlessly classy, but her usual, easy, pleasant demeanor from school was gone. She was intense in a way I had never seen her before, and all that intensity was directed at an oblivious Logan. As she stood up and slowly walked toward him, I finally realized that what I had been sensing from her was anticipation. She halted behind him and threw a glance over her shoulder at me. You should leave unless you want to watch. I scrambled to my feet in embarrassment as I understood her meaning, but she had already turned back toward Logan. Don't stop working, she told him. Try not to lose your focus. Her tone didn't sound seductive, but I didn't stick around to see why she thought he might lose his focus. Logan and I never discussed that incident, and it didn't change our easy camaraderie. I made sure to leave immediately, though, whenever Julia showed up at his house from then on. He resumed his travels after Christmas, and we talked over the phone. By that time, Morgan and Blaine had become an official couple, and Logan was relieved that things had worked out between them.
What about you?
He asked me.
Are you dating anyone new?
No, I replied. I'm taking a break from dating for a while. Besides, I'm too busy catching up at school. Good thing I have a genius best friend I can call for help anytime I need it.
I'm your best friend?
He asked in surprise. You are, I admitted. Morgan is a great friend, I hastened to add, but she doesn't really get me the way you do. Maybe it's because she's younger and more naive. You're just really insightful. See? My fancy education is teaching me words like insightful, I said in a playful manner to cover my embarrassment over getting all deep about why I considered him my best friend.
Tell me more about how wise and great I am.
He urged jokingly. Except for never wanting to get married, you're just about perfect, I told him sincerely.
Are you proposing to me?
He quipped. I should, I stated with a touch of bitterness. Cade thinks that I'm scheming to marry you for your fortune. I'm tempted to tell him we're engaged just to see the look on his face.
Haven't moved on from him yet, have you?
Have you moved on from Julia? I retorted, and instantly regretted it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought her up,
I don't mind if you mention her.
he assured me.
I'm not going to fall to pieces if you speak her name.
So, are you back together? I asked carefully.
The things are still the same.
He replied.
We see each other once in a while, but we're not a couple.
But she seems so into you, I protested awkwardly. I mean, uh, she was staring at you like I wasn't even there. Uh, I trailed off in embarrassment.
That was sex.
He stated matter-of-factly, seemingly unconcerned that I had been there for the prelude. Did you know she was there? I asked curiously. I mean, before she, uh, talked to you.
Yes,
He answered.
since the moment she walked into the room.
But you didn't say anything to her, I exclaimed in dismay. You didn't even say hi to her,
That's part of the excitement.
he said.
I kept my focus on my research, but I was aware of her being there. I have very good concentration, and so does she. It's not easy to distract her, or me.
I realized that this was some kind of sexual game that they played, and I didn't care to know any more about it. What did interest me was how he could handle this emotionally. So, you're okay with just having what you have with her? You don't want more? There was a pause before he answered.
I'd rather have her in my life this way than not at all.
I understood that he was telling me he'd settle for whatever Julia gave him. I didn't think that was fair to him, and I told him so. It's like you're broken up, but not really. I think you should make her choose if she wants to be with you or not. Tell her you'll break up with her for real if she doesn't want to be in a real relationship with you,
This works for us.
he argued, obviously reluctant to take the chance of losing her completely. She's holding you back from finding someone else, I insisted.
And what's holding you back from finding someone else?
He retorted. It's only been a few months since we broke up, I said defensively. I'm not ready to date anyone else yet,
I'm not looking for anyone else yet either.
he said. Okay, I agreed. I won't bug you about that anymore. I thought about how my meddling hadn't helped Morgan's love life at all, and I decided not to interfere in Logan's love life. When Morgan began pestering me about dating, I took comfort in Logan's acceptance of my refusal to date. Since he was a guy, he had no interest in matchmaking. He didn't obsess about whether I would have a date for prom or when I would start dating again. It didn't bother him that I still hadn't gone on a date with anyone after 2 years. Both of us were in some kind of dating limbo, although he still had his arrangement with Julia. He also sometimes hooked up with other girls. It was something he had mentioned casually to me when I had been impatient to get the details about his first college party. He didn't text me back until the next day. Did you stay out all night? Or were you hungover? I had never seen Logan drunk, and I was a little disappointed to have missed that. I wondered what he was like when he was drunk.
Neither. Had a girl stay over.
I was a little shocked by this quick turn of events, but I assumed that he'd developed a crush on a girl in one of his classes and had approached her at the party. I called him to get the whole story, thinking that he was finally moving on from Julia, but he explained that it had been just a one-night stand. "You have those?" I asked in surprise.
Sometimes,
He answered. "Does Julia know?" I questioned in a scandalized tone.
I told you that we're not together.
He reminded me. "But you still see each other, and that's the kind of thing she should know," I sputtered. "You're sleeping around and—"
She broke up with me.
He interrupted in agitation.
Beyond safety precautions and birth control, my sex life isn't any of her business. Or yours. I will tell you, though, that I am not sleeping around. I occasionally hook up with someone, but it doesn't happen with enough frequency to be described as sleeping around. It's true,
An unfamiliar voice told me.
the lucky bastard has girls hitting on him every minute of the day, but he doesn't take advantage of it. I thought he was asexual until last night. Give me back my phone, Miles.
I heard Logan's voice demanding in the background.
I'm Miles.
He stated, completely ignoring Logan.
Who am I speaking to?
I'm Lexie.
Another girl,
He exclaimed in delight.
I bet you're hot. If Logan won't— Miles,
Logan yelled.
give me back my phone. Okay, sheesh. You must be off limits, because he never cares if I flirt with the other girls who are after him. Bye, Lexie. Hope I get to meet you in person sometime.
Bye, Miles, I replied with a laugh.
Lexie,
Logan said, apparently in possession of the phone again.
sorry about that. My annoying roommate doesn't understand the concept of privacy. Annoying? Dude, that hurts. And I stayed out all night so you could have your privacy. You stayed at Candace's dorm,
Logan retorted.
See the sacrifices I make for you?
Logan snorted in response to that.
Aha! You do notice hot girls.
Miles exclaimed in glee.
Get out of my personal space.
Logan snapped irritably.
Sorry, Lexie.
He repeated to me.
It's almost impossible to carry on a conversation with him here.
That's okay, I said. I like him. He's funny. Anyway, I'll let you go and catch up with your roommate.
There's nothing to catch up on.
He insisted.
We don't.
He broke off and began again in an agitated tone.
I hope you don't think we trade stories that we talk about details. Hell no,
Miles exclaimed, his voice sounding close again.
Some things are private. Get out of my face.
Logan snapped in exasperation.
I'll have to call you later, Lexie,
he told me. He did call me later that day, and we had a somewhat awkward discussion about casual sex. I had resorted to pumping Lauren for information about Julia. Lauren was the only girl in Morgan's group of friends that I had formed a real relationship with outside of the group. She had a chill attitude that I gravitated to. The other girls were nice, but they were more excitable and immature. They had also only really wanted to come over my house to drool over my hot stepbrother, and they had been extremely disappointed to learn that he had moved away. Being more observant than the others, Lauren had also picked up on my heartbreak over Cade. "So, you and your stepbrother, huh?" she said quietly to me while we were all on a shopping trip together. I gave her a startled look, wondering if Morgan had told her my secret. I glanced toward where she and the other girls were looking through racks of clothes. "Nobody said anything," Lauren assured me. "Morgan's a mess over Blaine, although she's pretending to be fine. Let me guess, she slept with him to get him out of her system, right?" My gaze slid away from hers because I didn't want to tell her anything if Morgan hadn't. "And she didn't tell me because she thinks I'll say I told you so." Lauren sighed. "Which I will," she added with a grin, as my gaze returned to her face. "As soon as she stops fighting it and admits that she likes him." "I think she does too," I admitted, without saying anything more about it. "And you like your stepbrother," she said. "Is that why your parents made him move?" "How do you know they made him move?" I questioned in bewilderment. "He left 2 months into the school year, and you said nothing about him moving when they asked about coming over to see him?" which means that you didn't know he was moving. Also, you've been depressed about it." "I am not depressed about it," I denied. "I don't care where he lives." "Right. And Morgan doesn't care about Blaine either," Lauren remarked dryly. "Her situation isn't as complicated," I said. "No, it isn't," she agreed, with sympathy in her eyes, and didn't push me for more acknowledgement of my relationship with Cade. That conversation, along with her discretion, made me begin to trust her. She never spread gossip about people, although she listened to everything that was said. She also observed everything and picked up on things that other people didn't. I suspected that she knew lots of things about our classmates that she didn't comment on. After a year of friendship, I'd yet to hear any gossip directly from her before I heard it from other people first. I was hoping she would share some with me discreetly this time, though. She somehow even discerned from my voice on the phone that I wanted to ask her something. After replying to my small talk, she cut right to the chase. "What did you call to ask me? Just spit it out." Uh, well, I hedged. "I was kind of wondering if you knew anything about Julia. Um, other than dating Logan. Do you know if she's—" I trailed off uncomfortably as I struggled to find a delicate way to phrase it. "Have you heard anything about her with any other guy?" "Since Logan," I clarified. "You want to know if she's hooked up with anyone?" Lauren stated bluntly. "Why? Are you asking for Logan?" "No," I replied, trying to think how to answer without betraying any confidences. "I'm just curious myself. I know they broke up, but they still see each other sporadically," Lauren finished for me. "It's common knowledge that they still hook up. You want to know if she hooks up with anyone else as well?" "Why? Did Logan hook up with someone at college?" "I don't understand their relationship," I said without answering directly. "Maybe there are just some people you can never get out of your system," she suggested. "Then why can't they just be together?" I questioned in frustration. "You'll have to ask them that," she said. "They need to get together and make genius prodigy babies and live happily ever after," I remarked fervently. Lauren laughed. "Maybe they will. Maybe they'll figure it out like Morgan and Blaine did and become sickeningly in love. If they weren't so damn cute together, I think I'd puke." I smiled. "I don't think I've ever seen a cuter couple. Can you imagine their babies?" "What is it with you and babies? I hope you're not planning to become a teen mom." "No," I exclaimed. "But don't you want to have kids someday? I can't believe that Logan doesn't." "He's a guy," she said dismissively. "They don't start thinking about having babies until much later. He'll probably change his mind eventually." "What about you?" I asked curiously. Even after a year, I still didn't feel like I knew that much about her. "I guess I assume I'll have kids someday," she replied. "But I'm not dying to have babies." "With Ryan?" I inquired, still feeling guilty over my secret surprise that she hadn't started dating one of the other Black students instead of the white guy who had become her boyfriend. My automatic assumption bothered me, because I had never considered myself to be a prejudiced person. "Who knows?" she answered carelessly. "We're still in high school. I'm hoping that babies are still a long way into the future. Who knows who I'll be with by then?" "Oh," I responded in surprise. "You don't think you'll be with Ryan?" "What are the chances that we'll still be together 10 years from now?" she replied pragmatically. "How many people do you know who have been together since high school?" I thought about how my mom had only shown me the diary she had kept when she met my father. She had claimed that she couldn't show me the later one because it contained stuff that I didn't want to read about my parents. Her tone and manner had implied that it was sexual stuff, but I wondered if there was more to it than that. Maybe she had written something about my dad that she didn't want me to see. Her revelation that his fatal accident might have been caused by reckless driving had upset me, and maybe she didn't want to reveal anything else about him. I did sometimes wonder if they would have still been together if he were alive. It aggravated me that Cade had read more of her diaries than I had, and that he knew more of her secrets. Not many, I answered glumly. Hey, I bet Morgan and Blaine will be one of those couples. She soothed me, mistaking the direction my thoughts had taken. Maybe even Julia and Logan. Since she had brought the subject back to them, I prodded her to answer my original question. So, do you know if Julia has, uh, if there's been another guy since she— Oh, stop beating around the bush, Lauren exclaimed. You want to know if she's hooked up with anyone since she broke up with Logan? Yes, but don't go telling him that, or anyone else either. I won't, I promised. But does she have a new boyfriend, or— It's or, she told me after I trailed off. I'm guessing that you've never just hooked up with someone since you can't even say it. But how can they do that with someone else if they're in love? I protested. Maybe they're not in love, she suggested. I know that he is, I said. He told you that? She asked. He didn't actually say that, but it's pretty clear that he does. Really? She challenged. Maybe you just need to think that to keep things platonic between you. What? I asked in bewilderment. It's just something to consider, she said. Maybe the reason you're not interested in dating anyone is because no other guy compares to Logan. Or maybe my theory is wrong. It is, I insisted. Even if Julia wasn't in the picture, I wouldn't be thinking about dating Logan. I like him only as a friend. Or maybe you're just worried about upsetting Morgan, she mused. She did have a crush on him for a long time, but I think she's over that now since she fell in love with Blaine. It has nothing to do with Morgan. I honestly just like Logan as a friend. Why can't people accept that? I complained. Cade always accused me of— I trailed off after realizing that I had brought his name into the conversation. Cade was jealous of you and Logan? Lauren asked. Are you guys still— She began carefully and paused. I know he comes to visit. No, I denied forcefully, although I hadn't ever confirmed the existence of a romantic relationship between me and Cade to Lauren. He's just visiting his dad and Noah. You know you can talk to me about this. I'm not going to tell anyone. I know, I said, but there's nothing to talk about. Cade is my stepbrother, and that's all. I spoke those words, but I never thought of him that way in my private thoughts. Stepbrother never entered into it. He was just Cade, the guy I had fallen for because of his secretly emotional side. Yet the bigger part of him was cold and heartless, and it had demolished my feelings for him. There was nothing about him that inspired sisterly feelings in me. Noah was our sibling, but Cade and I could never be that to each other. My anger and hate toward him had faded after Noah was born, but it hadn't been replaced by any kind of affection. When the three of us were together, Cade was Noah's brother, and I was Noah's sister, but those feelings didn't extend to each other. There was always an undercurrent of restrained intensity between Cade and me, despite our polite behavior toward each other. Cade dropped that barrier after the class during which he had been surprisingly silent and well-behaved. He hadn't tried to distract me from the lecture once, and I'd almost forgotten that he was sitting beside me. When the professor dismissed us, Cade placed his hand on my arm to keep me from getting out of my seat. I hadn't seen such an intense look in his eyes in a long time, and I got caught in the snare of his heated gaze. Lexie, he said in a quiet, intimate voice. I stared back at him in nearly breathless anticipation. Do you want to get coffee before your next class? He asked in that same softly measured, hypnotic voice. Yes, I responded, without really thinking about the question. He gave me that warm, beautiful smile that I loved and held my hand as we exited the lecture hall. I was cocooned in contentment until I heard the words of the girl who had been talking to him before class. "See, that's his girlfriend," she said in disappointment as she gestured toward us. Realization hit me as I remembered that I was not Cade's girlfriend, and I dropped his hand like it was burning me. My face flamed in humiliation at having succumbed so easily to him.
Lexie,
He said in a pleading tone.
it's just coffee.
"I can get coffee on my own," I retorted stiffly, and took off down the corridor. Cade immediately caught up to me.
You're going the wrong way.
"Leave me alone," I snapped at him.
Why are you fighting this? Your first instinct was to say yes to me.
He argued.
Our parents aren't here to stop us, so we can do what we want.
"Our parents didn't break us up. You did that, Cade," I reminded him.
I made a mistake,
He said. "I'm the one who made the mistake," I told him. "I knew better than to get involved with you. It's not a mistake that I'm going to make twice."
Lexie,
"No," I cut him off forcefully. "Don't waste your breath. There's nothing you can say to change my mind."
okay.
He agreed. His sudden capitulation was so unexpected that I halted in my tracks and looked at him to see if he was sincere. There was now a wicked gleam in his eyes that made my pulse speed up. His slow, sexy smile accelerated it even more.
Okay. I won't say anything.
His emphasis on that word implied that he would do something instead, and I watched him with wary but secretly excited anticipation. His dark eyes smoldered as he slowly lifted his hand toward me while I tensed in preparation to swat it away. He brought it back toward himself instead and grazed it against his lips as he made the motion of locking them. He kept his gaze fixed on me until he turned and walked away. The dissatisfaction I felt at his departure was at odds with my demand that he leave me alone. Chapter 3. It became clear that Cade thought his mere presence would be enough to tempt me into... Well, I wasn't sure what he expected to happen as he continued his vow of silence to me. He sat beside me in every class we shared, but he only spoke to other people. I didn't say a word to him either, so his silence shouldn't have bothered me. Conversely, now that he wasn't doing anything to get my attention, I was more aware of him than ever. It took effort not to look at him, but his gaze was always focused on the professor whenever I surreptitiously glanced at him. After a couple of days, the girl in our microeconomics class questioned him about our situation. "Did you guys break up?"
No.
He answered her. "We're not dating," I told her, feeling like I could join the conversation as long as I wasn't speaking directly to Cade. She chose to speak to him rather than to me. "But you said she was your girlfriend,"
Yes, I did.
he said without elaborating. "But she says she's not," she protested in confusion.
She will be again.
He stated. "So she's your ex-girlfriend," she pressed him. "So you're actually single,"
I'm waiting for Lexie to give me another chance.
he replied. "But what if she doesn't want to?" the girl asked him in frustration. "I don't," I confirmed. "See? She's telling you plain as day. You should forget about everything and have some fun. I'm going to a party tonight. You should come with me,"
I'm telling you plain as day that I'm not interested in you.
he retorted coldly. "You don't have to be a dick," she snapped back at him angrily. "When you get lonely, you'll find out that you've burned all your bridges." She left to go sit in a seat in another row, and I broke my silence toward Cade. "She's right. You should have been nice about turning her down. Girls aren't going to want to go out with you if word gets around that you're a jerk." He shrugged unconcernedly and then smiled at me. "I'm going to a party tonight with my roommate," I volunteered for no apparent reason. She's never gone out without her boyfriend before. She's never had a girls' night out before. Can you believe that? He tapped his lips with an apologetic expression. I rolled my eyes. You're allowed to talk to me. He shook his head. The professor began speaking in the next instant, and Cade turned his attention to him for the remainder of class, while I struggled to focus on the lecture. Cade was playing a stupid game, but it bothered me that I had lost by breaking the silence first. I resolved to outdo him by completely ignoring his existence from now on. The girl who approached him at the end of class made that difficult, because she stood in front of me and prevented me from getting out of my seat as she spoke to him. Hi, Cade. I'm Ashley. Jessica told me that you're currently single, so I just wanted to let you know that I'm interested in you.
As I told Jessica, I'm waiting for Lexie to be my girlfriend.
I kept my gaze on the pretty redhead in front of me. Um, excuse me? I need to get up. She didn't even spare me a glance as she directed a sultry smile at Cade. If you get tired of waiting, come to me. I won't make you wait, she told him, her meaning very clear. She finally moved out of my way as she strutted past him. I peeked at him to see his reaction to her, but his gaze was on me instead of her ass. I quickly looked away from him and shot out of my seat. Cade followed me, and my awareness of him behind me was so acute that it made all the nerve endings in my back tingle. I had a half hour before my next class, but I walked straight there anyway, just to get rid of Cade. He didn't have that class with me, but he fell into step beside me. Aren't you going to get coffee? I snapped. You're always wanting me to get coffee with you. He didn't answer, of course, and I berated myself for already failing in my resolve to ignore him. I clamped my mouth shut and fixed my gaze straight ahead. The lecture hall was empty when I got there, but Cade sat down right beside me and kept me silent company as I pulled out my Kindle and attempted to read. I saw him checking his watch in my peripheral vision, and I felt his eyes on me as I absorbed only a fraction of what I was reading. I swiped a page every so often so that he wouldn't notice my lack of attention to the screen I was staring at. My breath caught in my throat when he leaned in to whisper in my ear.
He took her nipple into his hot mouth and sucked on it, making her moan.
Heat spread like wildfire through my body as I imagined Cade doing that to me.
His hand found the engorged nub between her legs at the same time, and his thumb rubbed relentlessly at it, eliciting louder and more desperate moans from her.
The hot desire I felt turned into humiliation as I realized that he was reading from the romance novel on my Kindle. I shoved him away from me and had to grab my Kindle to keep it from falling off my lap.
You don't have to settle for reading about it, Lexie. I'll bring all your fantasies to life.
Go, I said through gritted teeth without looking at him.
Like green light means go?
He inquired.
I'd love to, Lexie, but someone could walk in any minute and see us. Or is that one of your fantasies?
I turned to look at him with murder in my eyes. Get away from me. He glanced casually at his watch.
I hate to leave you with an engorged nub, but I have to get to class. We'll continue this later. I'm looking forward to all those desperate moans.
I glared at him until I noticed that his attempt to saunter away wasn't quite working. He was walking a little stiffly. I think you're the one with an engorged nub, I taunted. He halted and turned to direct such a heated look at me that it seemed to burn away the distance between us.
Only because I'm thinking about taking yours into my hot mouth and sucking on it.
Someone cleared his throat, and I was mortified to see my professor watching us.
She's my girlfriend,
Cade told him, and hurried from the room. I didn't contradict him, and dropped my eyes to the floor with my face burning. Fortunately, another student walked in and spoke to the professor, and more people began to arrive. This was another big class, so I was able to calm down as I became just one in a lecture hall full of students. This professor didn't take attendance, so I doubted he even knew which name to put to my face. He probably had no interest in my personal life anyway. I told myself that I had nothing to be embarrassed about because I hadn't done anything. Cade was the one being an ass, like usual. What was really upsetting me was that I had been so affected by his ridiculous seduction tactics. Even worse was the fact that he had only been mocking me at first when he started reading from my romance novel. The only thing that made it less humiliating was knowing that he had become aroused too. Damn him and his stupid games. Why the hell was I so attracted to him? Maybe I should just sleep with him already and get him out of my system. Instead of immediately dismissing that idea, I considered it more thoroughly. I could continue to fight my very strong attraction to Cade, or I could satisfy it and be done with it. I had never before set out to have sex without having an emotional connection first, but maybe that was why I had gotten my heart broken. This time I would go into it without any illusions, knowing that it was only about sex. The problem of him being my stepbrother still remained, but it helped that we no longer lived together. Since we were adults now, it was nobody's business what we did. Our parents didn't ever need to know about this one-night stand I was planning to have with him. It wasn't like we were going to have an actual romantic relationship that would make things uncomfortable for our parents. Once the sexual tension between Cade and me was gone, there'd be nothing left to create problems. I was able to relax after I made my decision because I felt in control of the situation. Cade wasn't going to take me unaware again with a stunt like he had pulled today. I would be expecting his seduction because I would initiate it myself. So when I saw him at the party I attended with my roommate that evening, I wasn't annoyed. He watched me from across the room as I urged Katie to let loose and dance with me, and he waited until she went to the bathroom to approach me.
Having fun?
He asked. Yeah, I replied. It took her a couple of drinks, but she's finally getting into the party mode.
That's good.
He said, before leaning in closer to speak into my ear.
How's your nub?
Still engorged, I told him. I'm gonna need you to do something about that. The deer caught in the headlights expression on his face was hilarious.
You're evil,
He retorted as I laughed at him. Payback, I remarked. Anyway, Katie's staying at her boyfriend's dorm tonight, so come over.
You're evil.
He repeated.
But I'm calling your bluff. I'll be knocking on your door.
He warned me. I gave him a sultry smile. I'm counting on it. Chapter 4. Cade walked us out to my car after the party.
You had the Mustang shipped here?
He questioned in surprise. No, I drove it here, I informed him. He gaped at me.
You drove it all the way here?
That's what cars are for, I remarked. You drive them.
Why didn't you just have Dad buy you a new one here?
He asked in bewilderment. He wanted to, I admitted. But I already have a car, so I brought it with me. Isn't this a new car? Katie asked. It looks brand new. My stepfather took very good care of it, I said, not wanting to explain that he was wealthy enough to have a staff keeping it looking brand new. Cade's identical Mustang was back at the house, and he still drove it when he came home. I assumed that he also had a car in California. Judging by what he had just said, he had probably bought a new car here, too. I'm going to go drop off Katie, I told him after she was seated in my car. I'll see you soon. He didn't answer, but he stood watching me as I pulled out of the parking lot and drove away. I still felt sure of my plan, and I was starting to anticipate finally fulfilling the fantasies I'd had about Cade for the past 2 years. I told him which party we were going to, Katie confessed. I hope it was okay to tell him. You guys seem like you're getting along now. Yeah, we are, I assured her. It's okay that you told him. Anyway, did you have fun? Yes, she answered enthusiastically. I'm so glad you talked me into going. You're the best roommate ever. I laughed. Part of her exaggerated praise was probably due to her alcoholic buzz, but she had obviously had a good time. I had made sure that she didn't get wasted, and I had remained sober myself since I was the designated driver. Therefore, I had nothing to take the edge off my nerves when I arrived at my dorm and saw Cade waiting for me in front of the building.
I'm here.
He taunted me with a smirk. I silently walked past him, but he overtook me.
Let me get the door for you,
He said in a smug tone as he brandished his ID card at me. I stood back and let him unlock the door, and he held it open and gestured for me to walk in ahead of him. Two girls got on the elevator with us, both of them checking Cade out blatantly. He didn't even spare them a glance as he kept a challenging look fixed on me. He obviously thought that we were playing some kind of game of chicken and that I would soon back down. I still said nothing as we exited the elevator, and he followed me to my dorm room. When we were alone inside, he leaned against the door with a lazy smile. It faded as I purposely approached him and leaned in to kiss him. He groaned as I pressed myself against him while deepening the kiss. Just like in the past, we were quickly swept up in a frenzy of passion. Our positions had somehow become reversed, and Cade had me up against the door with my legs wrapped around his waist. My dress was hiked up, and he was grinding himself into my core. I was already building toward my climax. Don't stop, I pleaded mindlessly. Oh, yes, Cade.
Come for me, Lexie.
He urged me as he kept up the delicious friction. I moaned as I crested wave after wave of pleasure. Cade carried me to the bed afterwards and gently set me down. He sat down beside me and placed his arm around me and smiled happily at me.
I'm glad you decided to give me another chance.
I placed my hand firmly down on top of the bulge between his legs, and he sucked in a breath. What are you gonna do with this? I challenged him.
Lexie, we don't have to.
Do you want me or not? I demanded.
Yes, but it doesn't have to be tonight if you're not ready. I loved seeing you come, so don't feel like you have to.
I interrupted him again. It has to be tonight, I insisted. I want to do this now. He seemed taken aback for a moment, and then his sexy smile returned.
I didn't know you were so demanding, but I like it.
Less talk, more action, I said. He responded with a wicked gleam in his eyes that started my pulse racing again.
You asked for it,
he said, and tipped me back on the bed. He pulled up my shirt and shocked me by closing his mouth over my nipple right through my lacy bra. I gasped at the sudden sensation and then whimpered for more as he teased me by removing his mouth and rubbing the wet material with his finger. He toyed with the front clasp.
Easy access. Were you planning this when you got dressed for the party?
Yes, I answered.
You wore this for me?
He asked.
You knew I would be there?
No, I replied. I was going to call you afterwards and tell you to come over. And now you're here, so can we get on with it?
But you were thinking about me?
He pressed.
What were you imagining, Lexie? Tell me your fantasy.
I was thinking you would actually take my clothes off instead of talking all night. I snapped at him. He chuckled at my frustration.
So impatient,
He chided me.
Don't you know it's better when you don't rush?
He smirked at me, but my retort died on my lips when his gaze intensified.
I want to hear those desperate moans,
He said in such a sexual tone that my stomach dipped into freefall. All the control I had thought I had over the situation was gone as Cade drove me to the point of desperation. I'd expected a quick, frenzied hookup, after which he would go back to his own room. I'd never imagined that Cade would be capable of putting so much time and effort into my pleasure. He wasn't supposed to be such an amazing lover, and he wasn't supposed to stay all night. And I sure as hell wasn't supposed to still want him the next day, especially after having had sex with him 3 times the previous night. "You have to leave," I told him, as his hand started to wander over my naked body.
"One more time for the road,"
He urged. I swatted his hand away and rolled out of bed to get dressed. "You're just going on the elevator." He came up behind me and pulled me back against him.
"Yes, you in the elevator is one of my fantasies."
"Stop," I protested weakly, as his hand stroked between my legs.
Emergency stop button. You leaning back against the wall like this. Me down on my knees in front of you. My mouth right here,"
he said, as he flicked his finger over the spot. I stumbled out of his grasp. "No," I said more forcefully, even as I ached for his touch. "We're done now,"
"Let me just get you off before I go."
he urged.
"I'm not gonna—"
"No! You have to leave now. It's the next day, so we're done." I faced him and crossed my arms, although it was difficult to project confidence when I was standing there half naked with only a t-shirt on. He seemed to take me seriously, though, because his eyes narrowed at me.
"What does it matter what day it is? And what do you mean by done?"
"It means you got what you wanted, and that's it. We finally got it out of our systems, so we're done." He suddenly looked furious.
"What I wanted? I didn't wait for you for 2 years just for a one-night stand. I told you that I want to be with you."
"It was just sex," I stated.
"That's total bullshit, Lexie. I know you want more than just a hookup. Be my girlfriend."
He urged. "I was your girlfriend," I reminded him, "but that meant nothing to you."
"So that's what this is about. Punishing me?"
"I hardly think that having sex with you all night is punishing you," I retorted.
"You gave me a taste, and now you're going to deny me when I know exactly what I'm missing."
His eyes slid hungrily down my body, making me aware again of my partial nudity. He was still completely naked, and I struggled to keep my gaze on his face. The way he was looking at me was arousing enough, and my erotic memories of the previous night weren't helping me to ignore Cade's effect on me.
"Be my girlfriend,"
He pleaded. I shook my head. "No, we finished what we started, and we're done now." He exhaled in frustration.
"Okay, Lexie. Have your revenge. But there is no fucking way we're done."
He started grabbing his clothes from the floor and putting them on, and I took one last look at his body before it was covered from my view for good. Then I quickly got dressed too, before Cade yanked the door open and stormed out of the room. Chapter 5. I took a shower after Cade left and tried to wash away all traces of him from my skin. It wasn't as easy to let go of last night as I had expected. I blamed it on waking up with Cade this morning. He was supposed to be long gone by then, and that was what was throwing me off. There was no clear separation between last night and today. It felt like we had continued into the next day, the way a real couple would. I'd expected to sate my previously unfulfilled desire for Cade and get him out of my system for good. The scorching hot sex we'd had obliterated all comparisons to the sex I'd had with Lucas. That had been more about enjoying being with him than him driving me wild with desire. Cade had inflamed me past the point of all my inhibitions, and he had pleasured me in ways that Lucas never had. I hadn't wanted to experience such mind-blowing sex with him, because now he stood out as my best lover when I hadn't wanted him to be anything special. I had thought that we would burn through our combustible attraction quickly, but it had remained ultra hot all night, and I still felt a smoldering desire for him as erotic memories of him replayed in my mind. This led to new fantasies of him joining me in the shower. I struggled to banish such thoughts and clear my mind. I was supposed to be making a fresh start today and leaving behind my forbidden attraction to Cade. I wasn't supposed to be craving him even more. I decided to focus on my other appetite and eat breakfast. I was famished after expending so much energy last night having all that sex. Stop thinking about it, I chided myself. The soreness between my legs made that nearly impossible, though. It was a good soreness, which I hadn't known was possible. Eating a large breakfast added to my feelings of physical satisfaction and indulgence. When I went back to my dorm, I was accosted by memories of the erotic things that Cade had done to me on my bed. I realized now that I should have gone to his room last night instead, so that I wouldn't be reminded of him every time I looked at my bed. Katie wasn't back yet to distract me, so I decided to leave the room and go take a dip in the pool. When I saw that they also had a lazy river, I floated around in it leisurely and relaxed. My mind drifted too, and it was in this calm state that I was able to savor my memories of the previous night and decide to chalk the whole thing up to a memorable college experience. People often expanded their sexual experience in college, and that was what I had done. It just happened to be with Kate. But that didn't make it any more significant than if it had been with any other guy.
Lexie,
He said, as he suddenly appeared beside me and grabbed onto the inner tube I was on. The slow heat that had suffused my body while I lazily sifted through carnal images in my mind now raged into a fever at the sight of him. He was shirtless in the pool, of course, and I had the urge to press my lips to his wet skin. "What are you doing here?" I exclaimed in a much too breathless voice. His low, deep voice seemed to slide down my spine the way his dark eyes slid down over my chest and down to my thighs.
I was working out, and I saw you come in here. It's a good thing I was planning to cool down in the pool later, so I brought my swim trunks. I like your bikini.
He had seen me naked, so I shouldn't have felt so exposed to him in my sporty blue bikini. It suddenly seemed to be emphasizing what it was covering rather than hiding it. Cade's eyes smoldered like he could see right through the material. His words matched his wicked gaze as his hand touched my thigh.
Too bad we're not alone. You're in the perfect position for me to taste you while I'm standing up.
I actually felt a sharp twitch between my legs at the thought of feeling his mouth there again. "Cade," I protested weakly.
I can imagine how your moans would echo in here.
He continued in that seductive voice. "That's not going to happen again," I managed to tell him more firmly. "It was a one-time thing, just to finish what we started before and get it out of our systems."
Really?
He inquired.
Then why do you still want me if I'm out of your system?
"I don't," I denied.
You think I don't know what you're thinking when you look at me that way?
He demanded.
I bet if I touched you right now, I'd feel how soaking wet you are for me.
"Of course I'm wet, moron," I retorted. "I'm in a pool."
Dry off first and then let me feel you.
He challenged. "You're not touching me again," I told him. "Now let me go. I want to get out of here." To my surprise, he did as I asked.
You can still stay here if you want. I'll leave.
He offered.
I just wanted to ask you to go out to dinner with me.
"No," I replied.
Damn it, Lexie. Why are you fighting this? You know how good we are together. Why won't you be my girlfriend?
"I was your girlfriend, but that meant nothing to you. The only reason it's so important to you now is because I said no. You can't stand that I'm not begging you to be with me."
I was an idiot.
He acknowledged.
I'm so sorry, Lexie, but I swear to you that I'll never leave you again.
You're right, I said. You won't ever have the chance to. With that, I walked out of the pool and into the locker room where he couldn't follow me. I felt some semblance of closure, and I hoped that it would last. Chapter 6. I waited for Logan's advice after confessing my one-night stand with Cade to him. I hadn't told Morgan because I already knew what her advice would be. She would want me to get back together with Cade and forget about how he had dumped me the first time we were together. Logan was staring off into space, seemingly lost in thought. His roommate had already left for the party that Logan and I were also planning to go to. His smirk when I said that I needed to talk to Logan first made it obvious that he thought we were staying behind to have sex. Hardly anyone could believe that Logan and I were just friends.
Are you sure that it's just physical?
He asked me as his gaze refocused on me. Well, yeah, I replied. That's all we did. It's not like we've been dating and falling in love.
But you were before,
He said.
Did you fall in love with him then?
We went on one date, I protested. That didn't give us much time to fall in love. Besides, it was mostly physical back then, too.
You said mostly.
Logan stressed.
That doesn't mean only. So you had feelings for him.
I remembered discovering a softer, more emotional side of Cade and being touched by it. I liked him, I admitted, but he destroyed that.
Did he?
He questioned in a rhetorical tone.
I wonder.
What's that supposed to mean? I demanded. Do you think I slept with him because I have feelings for him?
When have you ever hooked up with a guy just for sex?
He retorted.
Have you not been attracted to any other guys? Was Cade the only one who could ease your sexual frustration?
I explained to you that I wanted to get him out of my system, I exclaimed in consternation. We were interrupted the last time, and it's been hanging between us ever since. I just wanted to get rid of it.
But you haven't,
He stated.
It's so powerful that it never goes away. You always want more.
His expression was distant again, and I understood that he wasn't just talking about my situation with Cade. Is that how it is with you and Julia? I questioned quietly.
Yes,
He answered after a pause.
she's never out of my system, and it doesn't sound like Cade is out of yours.
No, I agreed glumly. It didn't work. It's actually kind of made things worse, I admitted in shame, my face heating up in embarrassment as I remembered how my body had reacted to Cade in the pool. What should I do now? I asked agitatedly. Logan sighed.
What you should do is probably not what you will do. That's why my only advice is to make sure you use protection. The last thing you need is to get pregnant when you're so unsure of your relationship.
I am not going to sleep with him again, I insisted in near outrage.
Right.
Logan commented with dry amusement. I'm not, I repeated defiantly and crossed my arms in a huff.
Okay.
He said, obviously still not convinced.
Are you ready to go?
I stood up and stalked toward the door. Yep, maybe I'll find some hot new guy at this party,
As long as it's not Miles.
Logan remarked in that same dry tone.
I'd rather not hear you moaning his name.
I turned to look at him in shock, my annoyance forgotten. He's done that while you're here?
Sure.
He replied like it was no big deal.
At least we have separate rooms now. It was really distracting when we shared a dorm.
My eyes widened to the size of saucers. He did that with you in the same room?
It's college.
He answered with a shrug. I was doubly aware now of how lucky I was to have Katie as my roommate. I can't believe girls would. I trailed off and shook my head. I would never do that with someone else in the room,
People lose their inhibitions when they're drunk.
he stated. I glanced sharply at him. Have you done that?
Yes.
He answered without embarrassment. My mouth dropped open as I stared at him.
The lights were off,
He said defensively.
he couldn't see us. It wasn't Julia.
He quickly added. That brought up a subject that troubled me. It was that girl you hooked up with last year? But wait, Miles said that he left the room to give you privacy, I said suspiciously as I recalled my conversation with him on the phone.
He did that time,
Logan confirmed. There were more times? I asked in dismay.
a few.
He replied. But, I continued hesitantly. How, um, I mean, if Julia is special to you, then how can you be with anyone else?
Julia refuses to be tied down. She sees other people too.
He explained.
As for being with someone else, some things are just physical.
Right, I said disapprovingly. Logan responded with a wry smile, and I stiffened my spine. Yes, just physical, like me and Cade, I declared. Just physical sex. He was laughing at me now.
What other kind of sex is there?
Shut up, I muttered.
There's phone sex.
He acknowledged. I rolled my eyes at that, since I considered it pathetic, but I got an erotic jolt when I received a dirty text message from Cade later that evening.
I want to take off your panties and make you come on my tongue.
Heat flooded my body as I remembered him doing that last night. That was something that I had never experienced before, and the desire to experience it again was suddenly overwhelming. I knew that I should ignore his text and possibly even block his number. Instead, I responded with a text that would surely encourage him. I'm not wearing panties. It was a lie, because I had underwear on under my dress. Kay didn't know that, though.
I'm coming over.
I suddenly wished that I was there, even as I told myself that it was good I wasn't. I'm at a party.
Where? I'll come get you.
I stared at his text as I tried to fight temptation and failed. I'll drive back, but Katie is there.
I'll wait for you outside. We'll go somewhere else.
I sent him a one-word reply. Okay. Logan wasn't fooled when I said that I was tired and going back to my dorm, but he didn't call me out on it. There were several girls flirting with him, and I wondered if he would hook up with one of them tonight. I was too preoccupied with my own impending hookup to dwell on it, and I made a stop in the bathroom to remove my panties before I left. My dress was long enough that I was in no danger of flashing anyone, but it still felt sinfully naughty to be walking around without underwear. It was another thing I had never done before, and the anticipation of meeting Cade this way heightened my arousal as I drove back to our dorm. He was waiting for me in the parking lot, and he got into the passenger seat after I parked the car.
My roommate's home too.
He told me.
I got us a room at the Hyatt.
I reached forward to restart the car, but he stopped me.
Wait. Put your hands on the wheel.
Why? I questioned, impatient to get to the hotel and be alone with him.
Because I want to feel how wet you are for me, and I don't want you to crash the car.
At his words, even more moisture pooled between my legs. I glanced around and saw no one else in our vicinity, so I made a move to pull my dress up for him.
No,
He said.
I want to do that. Put your hands on the wheel.
I obeyed in anticipation of feeling him touch me, but he paused to give me another command.
Keep your hands there until I tell you that you can move them.
I should have bristled at him ordering me to do anything, but it excited me in this situation. He slowly lifted my dress and sucked in a breath when I was exposed to him.
Did you go out like that?
He questioned in a rough tone. No, I admitted. I took them off before I came to meet you,
Where are they?
he demanded. In my purse, I replied, and spread my legs in invitation to him. He reached into the back seat where he had placed my purse before sitting down in the passenger seat. When he unzipped it and pulled out my panties, he gave me a sexy smile.
You took them off for me?
Yes, now touch me. He ran his hand slowly up my thigh and stopped right before he got to the juncture between my legs.
Are you wet for me?
Cade, I growled and shifted toward his hand, but he removed it.
Stay still,
He ordered. Stop teasing me, I protested.
you told me not to touch you again.
He retorted. I gritted my teeth, but my pride was long gone at this point. I changed my mind. Touch me, I urged. He surprised me by immediately placing his hand between my legs.
So wet,
He said, as I gasped at the sudden contact.
were you thinking about me?
Yes, I moaned as he began to rub at that special spot.
Were you wet for me at the pool?
He asked. Yes, I admitted.
Have you been thinking about me all day?
Yes, I answered breathlessly as I quickly approached climax. He thwarted me by removing his hand before I could reach orgasm.
Good. I've been thinking about you all day, too. Let's get to the hotel.
Cade, I pleaded, and grabbed his arm in an attempt to return his hand to where I wanted it.
I told you to keep your hands on the wheel.
He said.
You're driving, and I'll give you directions.
Fine, I retorted as I let go of him and dropped my hand into my lap. I don't need you. He firmly placed his hand over mine to still it.
Well, I would normally love to watch you touch yourself. I will leave this car if you do that. I want to make you come all night long, but I'll leave you on your own if you'd rather do it yourself.
I glared at him, but I moved my hand back up to the wheel. Cade pulled my dress back down and turned the key in the ignition.
You can take your hand off the wheel to shift, but keep it there the rest of the time,
He told me. I'm surprised you didn't bring handcuffs, I grumbled.
I'll buy a pair if that's one of your fantasies.
He replied as I pulled out of the parking lot. It's not, I stated quickly.
You can use them on me.
He offered. I glanced at him in surprise. That's one of your fantasies? It seems like you like to be in control. Keep your hands on the wheel, I imitated him.
Turn right at that light.
He directed.
I have a lot of fantasies about you, Lexie. Today, I'm in charge, and I know that's turning you on, or you wouldn't have gone along with it. But I sure wouldn't mind being naked and at your mercy another day.
Maybe I'll tease you like you're teasing me, I told him.
I'm not teasing you the way I want to because I'm afraid you'll get into an accident. Otherwise, I'd be touching you right now while you're driving. You'd have to keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road, with my hand between your legs the whole time. Does that turn you on, Lexie?
He asked as he placed his hand on my thigh. My hands clenched the steering wheel. Yes.
We'll do that one day on some deserted road. I'll keep teasing you until you're begging me to make you come. Delaying orgasm makes it more intense.
How do you know that? I asked.
I've been researching sex while I've been waiting to be with you. Turn left at the next light.
Have you really been waiting for me? I questioned uncertainly.
Yes, Lexie. I've been waiting for you, and it was worth it. Will you please be my girlfriend?
I hesitated, feeling torn between wanting to be with him and my doubts about whether I could trust him.
Please, Lexie. Do you want to make me beg? Because I will.
Like I begged you to make me come? I joked.
Oh, you haven't even started to beg for that yet.
he assured me in a sexually confident tone that gave me a delicious chill. If you can really make me beg for it, I challenged him with sudden wickedness, then I'll be your girlfriend.
Oh, Lexie,
He chided me darkly.
you're mine now.
Chapter 7. I fell asleep completely sated as Cade's girlfriend. I had actually screamed from the intensity of the orgasm that he had made me beg for, but he had made me come again later that night. Waking up in the morning with him brought a content smile to my face. I watched him sleep for a moment after I slipped out of bed. He was awake when I emerged from the bathroom.
Good morning, girlfriend.
He greeted me with a smirk. Good morning, boyfriend, I teased him back. He smiled happily.
We're finally together.
Yeah, I agreed, smiling back at him.
Will you go out to dinner with me now?
He asked. I think it's time for breakfast.
I meant now that you're my girlfriend. I want to take you out on a date,
He declared as he got out of bed.
First, we'll go to breakfast. Then we'll come back here so I can ravish you again before we have to check out of the room.
Amazingly, the thought of it got me excited again. I had never craved sex before, but I seemed to be insatiable with Cade. Maybe I'll ravish you, I replied, as my eyes traveled down his naked body.
If you keep looking at me that way, we'll never leave this room,
He warned.
In fact, I think we'll order room service so we don't have to get dressed. We'll just put on robes to answer the door.
That's a good idea, I told him. I can take a shower before breakfast gets here.
You in the shower. I have some fantasies about that. Let's eat breakfast first, because I don't want to miss out on that.
I rolled my eyes at him, but I was not at all opposed to having him join me in the shower. I had my own fantasies about that, and the thought of fulfilling them kept my libido fired up while we ate breakfast dressed only in the robes the hotel had provided. There was also something sexy about being covered up, yet naked underneath that cloth, held together by only a sash. All it would take to be exposed was untying the belt. Cade's thoughts had certainly strayed in that direction because he pulled me down to sit on his lap when I stood up with the intention of going into the shower. His hand slipped inside my robe to cut my breasts.
Easy access,
He commented.
I like it.
He tweaked my nipples before moving his hands down to where the robe gaped open between my legs. The shower, I panted when he began to stroke me.
After you come.
He promised. I leaned my head back against his shoulder and succumbed to the pleasure he was giving me. It felt so good that I wanted to prolong it, but Cade kept up a relentless pressure that brought my orgasm upon me quickly. No sooner had I cried out at the peak of my climax, and he was turning my head to kiss me hungrily. He untied my sash to fully open my robe and grasp my breasts again.
I'm going to fuck you in the shower,
He said in a passion-roughened voice. He suddenly yanked my robe off my shoulders, and I stood up to help him remove it. When I stepped forward, he came up behind me and pulled me back against him.
I want you now, like this.
He rasped in my ear. Before I knew what was happening, he was lifting me and carrying me to the bed. He set me down on my stomach and discarded his robe before climbing up on the bed behind me and grabbing my hips to thrust into me. I had never had sex in this position before, and I gasped at the feeling of deep penetration. Incredibly, the pleasure began to intensify within me again as he kept hitting just the right spot, and I began to moan with every thrust. My orgasm was so powerful that my whole body shook with the force of it, and I was barely aware of Cade following me into climax immediately afterwards. We were both panting with the effort of catching our breaths, and Cade still had my hips in a tight grip until he recovered enough to stand up and dispose of the condom. I rolled over onto my back, and he sprawled beside me for a moment before turning onto his side to cuddle with me. We lay there lazily, both of us completely spent. I had never felt so satisfied and content in my life as I did in that moment. Cade gave me a rueful smile.
Sorry about the shower.
No, don't apologize. That was amazing. Oh, wow, I gushed. I feel so good. He smiled at me in genuine happiness before his lips curved into a smirk.
So, I'm amazing, huh?
I was too much in a state of bliss to roll my eyes at him. Yes, I replied enthusiastically. He laughed.
Okay, now I know how to get you to agree with everything I say.
Mm, I responded, luxuriating in the satisfaction of my body. I could stay here all day, but I guess I better get in the shower and get dressed before we have to check out.
I'll join you in the shower next time.
He promised.
You wore me out, woman.
He admonished me playfully. He had worn me out too with the marathon sex sessions of these past 2 nights. I'd already had more sex with Cade than I'd had with Lucas, and I'd climaxed more times in a shorter amount of time than ever before in my life. My libido was well and truly sated. With the haze of lust cleared from my mind, my thoughts turned to my new relationship status with Cade while I took my shower. I had given in to his insistence that I become his girlfriend, but the truth was that I hadn't fought him very hard on it. One night with him hadn't been enough for me, and there was no use in continuing to deny it. We certainly had a strong physical connection, but now we were trying the more complicated connection of a romantic relationship again. My post-coital bliss had me feeling optimistic about it as I emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel. Cade had been watching TV, and he now got up to take his own shower. I searched around the room for my undies before I remembered that they were in my purse. Remembering my wild behavior from the previous night was a bit embarrassing in the light of day, and I got more embarrassed the more I thought about it, especially when I recalled how much I had moaned and whimpered and begged for Cade to make me come. I would have been completely mortified to ever face him again after that if he hadn't asked me to be his girlfriend. I was also glad that I had worn a simple A-line dress that could transition into day without making it obvious that I was wearing last night's clothes. Belatedly, I wondered if anyone in the surrounding rooms had heard us having sex, and that thought had me ready to hang my head in shame as we left the room. Fortunately, there was no one in the hallway, and I rushed toward the elevator to stab at the button in my hurry to escape unseen.
Why are you suddenly acting like the building's on fire?
Cade asked as I paced back and forth between the two elevators. We were very loud, I said quietly. I hope no one heard us.
I hope they did.
He countered.
They've got to be so jealous of us.
One of the elevators dinged, and I scrambled for it, only to stop short when the doors opened to reveal an elderly couple waiting to get off on our floor. My face heated in shame at the thought that they might have heard us last night, and I dropped my eyes to the floor as they walked past us. Cade was laughing at me as we got on the now empty elevator.
You're being way too paranoid. Even if someone did hear us, they don't care. Do you think that we were the only people having sex in this hotel last night?
I'm going to be quiet next time, I vowed. Cade's dark eyes glinted dangerously.
You can certainly try.
My stomach dipped at the sensual promise in his voice and gaze. Contrary to what I had expected, having sex appeared to have intensified the sexual attraction between us rather than diminishing it. Cade's effect on me was now so potent that a few words and a look from him were enough to excite me. and my libido flared back to life at the naughty intent he had just conveyed to me. Getting a call from my mom was like a cold shower. I placed my finger over my mouth in a gesture to Cade to be quiet before I answered my phone. "Hey, Mom. How are you?" "We're good. How are you, Lexie? How was your first week of classes?" "It was good," I replied, hoping that my sudden guilt and anxiety wasn't discernible in my voice. A week. It had only been a week, and I had already slept with Cade. "Do you like your classes?" she asked. "Which one is your favorite?" "I don't know yet," I answered. "They're all good." "How has your weekend been so far?" she questioned. "What are you doing today?" Not much. Just relaxing." We were out in the parking garage now, and I was anxious to get off the phone before my mom somehow discovered that I was with Cade. At least he had remained silent by my side. "With your roommate?" Mom inquired. "What was her name again?" "Katie," I said. "No, she's not here right now, but, I have to go to the bathroom, so could I call you back later?" "Oh, sure," she agreed. "You haven't been drinking, have you? Are you hungover?" "No," I assured her. "I just have to pee. I'll call you later, Mom." "Okay," she said, and I hung up before she could say anything else.
You know you're an adult now,
Cade commented dryly.
you don't have to sneak around with me behind her back.
"You know we can't tell them," I replied.
Why not? What are they going to do? It's not like my dad can threaten me with military school anymore.
I stared at him, momentarily at a complete loss for words. "But—"
Remember when we talked before about how we could be together in college? And now we are.
he declared. "But we still can't tell them," I exclaimed.
Why not?
He demanded. "They'll be upset, Cade. You know they will."
I don't care.
He stated obstinately.
They can't stop us now that we're adults. Besides, your mom will come around at least. She's a romantic.
"You did read her diaries," I accused. "It's so unfair that you've read them and I haven't."
You live in the same house, he pointed out. You couldn't find a way to sneak into her room and read them?
"That's invasion of privacy, Cade. You can't just do whatever you want like that." My argument didn't make a dent in his privileged mind.
All's fair in love and war.
"And which one was stealing my mom's diaries?" I asked in irritation.
Borrowed,
He corrected me.
They were returned, and it was war until I found out that she was really in love with my dad.
"War," I snapped as I glared at him. "Against my mom. What were you planning to do with her diaries?"
Show them to my dad,
he answered.
but she turned out not to be a gold digger.
He added with a look of amazement.
She's even got a soft spot for me, even after you told her I called her that. She's quite a lady,
he stated with respect. I was torn between outrage and basking in his praise of my mom. Before I could form a response, he added something that made my blood boil.
What she wrote proved to me that she didn't get pregnant on purpose to trap my dad, and that you didn't plan that seduction to get me kicked out of the house. It's the reason that I waited for you, Lexie, because I knew I'd never find another girl like you.
He tried to embrace me, but I stepped back out of his reach. "The only reason," I ground out. "The only reason," I emphasized again, "that you finally believed me is because you read the truth in my mom's diaries. So if you hadn't stolen her diaries, you would have never cared to get back together with me. Also, for your information, asshole, Jenna wasn't trying to trap you either, so she was a girl like me."
That's what she told you, Lexie, but you don't know that for sure.
"No," I retorted sarcastically. "I guess you don't know anything for sure unless you read it in someone's private diary. Maybe you should go break into Jenna's house and see if she has one."
I have no interest in Jenna,
he retorted.
Why are you even bringing her up now anyway? She has nothing to do with us.
"She was your girlfriend, and you dumped her like she meant nothing to you, just like you dumped me."
Those were completely different circumstances,
he snapped angrily.
And I've apologized repeatedly for the way I treated you. I'm trying to make it up to you now. I don't know what else I can do. You can take a taxi home, I told him as I opened the driver's side door of my car. I want to be alone right now. Seriously? You're just gonna leave me here? He complained. Why? What did I do? Everything was fine until your mom called. We don't have to tell her about us if you don't want to. There is no us. This was a mistake, I said as I sat down in my car. He grabbed a hold of the door as I tried to slam it shut. Bullshit. You could have tried to feed me that if it was only once, but not when you came back for more. Not when you said yes to being my girlfriend. You said yes to being my boyfriend once too, but that didn't stop you from dumping me. I guess the shoe's on the other foot now. His eyes narrowed at me with intimidating intensity. Are you saying you did this for revenge? It had been nothing of the sort, but in my anger, I took the opportunity he had just presented to me. Don't feel bad, Cade. You were so good that I thought you were a pro. I managed to give him a cold smile before yanking the door out of his hand and slamming it shut. I remained acutely aware of his glowering presence as I backed out of the parking spot, but I refrained from glancing at him before I drove away. My emotions were a jumbled mess, and I was no longer sure how I felt. Chapter 8. I drove around beside the Charles River and ended up finding a parking lot near a playground. It was quite a distance from the main attractions, but I just wanted to get out and walk rather than sightsee. I called Morgan in my agitation. She answered warily, because we hadn't spoken since I had called to ream her out for conspiring with Cade. I slept with him, I told her tersely. There was a pause before she responded. I'm assuming you mean Cade. Of course it's fucking Cade, I exploded. Are you happy now? Your plan worked. Did it? She asked carefully. I just got off the phone with him, and he's very upset. Oh, is he? I questioned sarcastically. Why'd you act like you didn't know I slept with him if he already told you? Because he didn't, she replied. He told me that you pretended to get back together with him just so you could dump him. He didn't mention anything about you sleeping with him. When did that happen? Last night, and the night before, I admitted. Ah, she responded in understanding. Yeah, I remember how that is. You can't think about anything else when you first get together. We're not together, I insisted. It was a mistake. That's what I told myself too. But it won't work, Lexie. You can't fight your feelings. I'm actually not sure why you even want to. It was different with me and Blaine. I was so hung up on the idea of being in love with Logan that... She trailed off. Do you have feelings for Logan? No, I assured her. I know what I made you promise, but that was before I fell in love with Blaine. So if you've been afraid to tell me about having feelings for Logan, don't... No, I interrupted her. I have no romantic feelings for Logan. This has nothing to do with him. Then what's the problem? She asked. You want to be with Cade, and he wants to be with you. Remember how it ended last time? How do I know he won't do that again? She sighed. He really hurt you, huh? I'm so sorry I was too distracted to realize that. You acted like you were all right, and I didn't pay enough attention to see that you weren't. Why didn't you tell me? It wasn't that big of a deal, I said dismissively. It's not like we were dating that long. We'd barely even started. It obviously was a big deal if it's still affecting you now, she insisted. It's just, he can change from hot to cold so fast. I don't know if I can trust him not to turn on me again. I confided, realizing as I spoke that this was at the root of my problem with Cade. And that's why you're fighting your feelings for him, she said gently. I'm sorry, Lexie. I thought I was helping you. You didn't make me sleep with him, I told her. I did that on my own. He's really upset, though, she broached tentatively. I don't think he'll mess it up this time if you give him a chance. I exhaled in frustration.
I don't know. I've got to think about it. But I've got to call my mom back right now. She called while I was with Cade, and I told her I had to go to the bathroom. With him? Like in the middle of. No! We were just leaving the hotel together. But I didn't want her to know he was there with me, I explained. I've really got to call her back. I'll talk to you later. After hanging up with Morgan, I called my mom and faked amusement when she asked me if I fell in. Then she almost gave me a heart attack when she asked me if I had seen Kate. Luckily, she launched into an explanation of Catherine mentioning to Robert where Cade had chosen to go to school, and that gave me time to compose myself. Did you know that he had applied to the same school as you? She questioned. No, I answered honestly. I assumed he was going to college in California. So did we, she said. I wonder why he chose to go to Boston. Did you tell him that you were going there? No, I replied. We never talked about college. He's majoring in business, too. Have you seen him in any of your classes? I debated what to tell her, but I decided that it would sound suspicious to claim that I hadn't seen him when we had the same major. Yeah, he's in a couple of my classes. I guess it makes sense he's majoring in business, since he'll be running his dad's company one day. Robert has made it clear that you could just as well be running his company as Cade. It will all be based on merit. He's not going to differentiate between you. I believed that, but I had no intention of taking Cade's legacy away from him. There were plenty of other companies where I could advance to the top, but I wasn't going to mention that now. I was relieved that my mom was more focused on my equality with Cade than on the possibility of something happening between us. Is your roommate back? She asked me suddenly. Is there anyone there with you, or can you talk freely? I'm alone, I answered warily, my anxiety spiking again over my guilty secret. Do you really like your roommate? I know you don't like Robert pulling any strings, but you don't have to live with her if you don't like her. Relief rushed through me. She didn't seem to suspect anything about Cade. Katie's great, Mom. Honest. I couldn't have asked for a better roommate. I launched into all the details about sweet, accommodating Katie. I told her about her reaction to meeting Logan and how she couldn't believe that he wasn't my boyfriend. It didn't hurt to keep Mom guessing about my relationship with Logan, since it would throw her further off the track about me and Cade. And I even had to drag her to a party because she had never been to one without her boyfriend, I added. Mentioning girl time was another tactic to throw off suspicion. At this point, I knew that I was being paranoid. It had been 2 years since Cade and I had been caught making out, and we'd been perfectly well behaved with each other ever since. Mom considered it a youthful mistake brought on by teenage hormones and the temptations of living together. Since that entire situation had been eliminated, she had no reason to suspect that Cade and I would ever pick up where we left off all that time ago. She was right, too, because our attraction should have fizzled out with time and distance. The fact that it hadn't was worrisome in itself. I could blame it on keeping it alive by harboring secret, unfulfilled fantasies about Cade. But what about now that they were fulfilled? Why was I still lusting after him? For the first time, I began to wonder if my attraction toward Cade would ever die. That thought put a pall over the future, and it made me definitely want to go work at another company where Cade wouldn't end up being my boss. As I got off the phone with Mom, I shook myself out of those thoughts. I was being ridiculous. Of course, Cade and I would both move on as we matured. We would eventually meet the people we would marry and have our own families. All of this would fade away to college craziness, just like the partying that our peers were doing. Cade, however, hadn't yet come to the same conclusion. He showed up at my door later that evening with a bouquet of flowers. Unfortunately, Katie had answered the door and let him in before I could protest. She was smiling from ear to ear to see his romantic gesture. "What are you doing here?" I demanded.
You said you'd go out to dinner with me.
he reminded.
Did you forget?
I scowled at him. Why would you still think that I'm going out with you? He put on a bewildered expression.
You said that you would. I made reservations, but are you standing me up?
I could see Katie frowning at me as she watched our exchange. The bastard was making me look like a cruel bitch. I have to get ready, I told him through gritted teeth. He smiled like he was the happiest guy on earth.
These are for you,
He said, and leaned in to kiss my cheek after handing me the flowers.
I'll wait for you outside.
Katie was back to smiling at me like my prince had arrived. What are you going to wear? She asked excitedly. I refrained from rolling my eyes at her clueless enthusiasm. Cade had on dress pants and a button-down shirt, so I decided on a pencil skirt and blouse. It was nice, but not too dressy. The skirt was also narrow enough and long enough not to allow him easy access. I was definitely wearing undies this time. Cade still looked at me like I was wearing something provocative.
Hot,
He declared as I approached him. He looked hot himself, and I was reminded that I preferred him in these kinds of clothes. It was something I had noticed at my mom's wedding, but he looked even hotter now than he did 2 years ago. More like a man, which he now actually was. My mind fast-forwarded to seeing him in business attire at the office, and I quickly shut down those suddenly arousing thoughts.
I could imagine you wearing something like that at the office. I'd never get any work done,
He remarked. My startled gaze flew to his at the coincidence of our thoughts, and a slow smile formed on his face.
Were you thinking about that too?
He inquired seductively.
You could call me into your office and tease me by crossing and uncrossing your legs, giving me a glimpse of you without any panties.
My office? I questioned in surprise. I thought it would be yours,
Oh, is that your fantasy?
he asked, and my cheeks heated in embarrassment.
What do you imagine me doing to you in my office?
Nothing, I muttered. Are we going now? You said you have a reservation. He led me to a car that was very understated for him. My Mustang was actually much flashier than Cade's Mazda.
I wanted to blend in.
He told me with a shrug when he saw my expression. As I sat down in his car, I tried to regain the anger I had felt toward him earlier. I don't appreciate you ambushing me into this state, I told him as he sat down beside me.
You agreed to the date, and you didn't say anything about canceling it.
He insisted obstinately. I thought that would be obvious when I told you this whole thing was a mistake,
I told you I'd wait for you before I read your mom's diaries.
he said. The change of subject threw me off. What?
In Florida,
He reminded me.
our talk on the balcony. I told you I'd wait for you, and I asked you to wait for me too. And you did.
He said in a voice that was like a warm caress.
I knew it even then, Lexie. I knew you were the girl for me.
But you said that you were planning to use my mom's diaries against her, I protested. That's why you took them.
That's what I told myself, because I didn't want to admit I was wrong. The truth is that her diaries confirmed what I already knew. She was a nice lady who had more sympathy for me than my dad did. She was the one who tried to make sure that I was included in everything. My dad wouldn't have even let me go on that vacation if it wasn't for her.
I remembered Cade making a comment like that to her during that vacation, and that he had been surprisingly warm toward her. That had been before he stole her diaries. I also recalled our conversation on the balcony, so he was telling the truth about that, too.
I already knew how badly I had messed up because I couldn't get you out of my mind. I was miserable that whole time until I saw you in Florida. When you talked my dad into letting me stay, I knew that we still had a chance. That gave me hope, and I knew that I just had to wait until we could be together. So please forgive me, Lexie. Please don't give up on us now when we can finally be together.
I gazed at him uncertainly. Do you really mean everything you said?
Yes,
He declared.
I'm so sorry, Lexie, and I promise to make it up to you. I want to take you on all the dates we never had.
I exhaled heavily, trying to expel my doubt. What he was offering sounded so good, and it was what I wanted too. Okay, I'll give you a chance, but you have to prove to me that you want more than just sex. He smiled wickedly at me.
You're the one who called me to your room with ulterior motives. You wanted to use me for a one-night stand.
His expression actually darkened after he spoke that last part, like he wasn't happy about being used for sex. Well, I said awkwardly, now that we're dating, it should be real dates instead of just hooking up. Like tonight is just dinner. His eyes took on that wicked glint that made my stomach dip.
Just dinner.
He agreed.
No sex.
Right, I confirmed, even though my body failed to get the message. Chapter 9. Cade took me to a nice restaurant with white tablecloths and comfortable, cushioned chairs. I'd never been to such a fancy steakhouse before, although I was no longer a stranger to dining out. Despite their wealth, my friends and I tended to eat at chain restaurants like most people our age.
So why didn't you go to Harvard?
Cade asked me after we ordered our meals.
I know Dad could have gotten you in.
Why didn't you? I retorted. I'm sure he could have gotten you in too.
I would have if you were going there,
He replied.
I'm surprised you aren't, because I know that Logan is there.
I don't base my decisions on what other people are doing, I huffed.
Hey,
He soothed.
there's no need to get confrontational. I didn't mean anything by it. I'm just curious about why you chose Boston.
Because I got in on my own, I answered proudly. Mom and Robert didn't even know I applied there until I got accepted, so I know he didn't pull any strings for me. In fact, he was not happy I picked it over Harvard. Kate smiled in amusement.
I'll bet. At least he still has hope that Noah will go to an Ivy League school.
I smiled at his mention of our little brother. Nah, he's gonna be a rock star. Cade laughed.
That would be great. I'd love to see the look on Dad's face.
The pleasant, warm feeling I had right now made me loosen up and enjoy myself on our date. It was just really nice to talk with Cade without being on the defensive. As I had discovered on our first date back when we were in high school, he could be great company. The atmosphere between us was now easy and natural as we segued from joking about Noah's rock stardom to talking about possibly going to a concert. That prompted a discussion on our musical tastes, and I was surprised that Kay didn't listen to music often. He said that he just never thought about putting on music when he was alone. I can't believe that, I exclaimed. I love music. A great song can completely change your mood, and sometimes it can express exactly how you feel, I added.
I guess I never thought of it that way.
He said.
I know a lot of people listen to music while they work out because it's supposed to energize you, but I've always liked to focus on my workout without all that noise. Beyond that, music is for dancing, and I don't dance.
You've never even danced around in your room? I asked incredulously. He looked appalled at my question.
That's something only girls do.
Excuse me? I retorted. What about Footloose and that scene in Risky Business?
That's fiction.
He stated.
Guys don't really do that.
Of course they do, I insisted. You can't tell me that no guy has ever gotten the urge to dance. It's one of the most fun things you can do.
I can think of much more fun things,
He replied in a suggestive tone. Dancing is much more fun than that, I told him with a smirk. He got that wicked glint in his eyes that always gave me a thrill.
We'll just dance instead then.
I'll hold you to that, I challenged him.
Okay,
He said decisively.
we'll stick to dancing until you ask me for those other things.
A laugh burst forth from me at the thought of how very sorry he would be for making me that promise. You're on. I'll bet anything that you'll be asking me for those things before I ever ask you.
Anything?
He asked, in such a wicked tone and with such a heated look that the thrill coursing through me took on a sharp edge that gave me the same combination of excitement and fear that I felt right before plunging down from an incredible height on a roller coaster. Within reason, I amended.
You said anything. So do we have a bet or not?
He pressed. The waiter arrived with our meals then, giving me a reprieve from answering. Cade regarded me with a challenging expression after he left.
Well,
Tell me the prize first, I insisted.
are you that afraid of losing?
He taunted me.
There's no point in even making a bet if you know you'll lose.
I bristled at his assumption that he already had me beat. I know I'll win, I declared. I just want to know what you'll lose. In truth, I was curious about what he would want me to do. I was also a bit worried about him having some kind of kinky fantasy that I couldn't fulfill. Was I about to find out that we weren't compatible after all?
That'll be left to my discretion.
He replied.
Do we have a bet or not?
His refusal to give me an answer spiked my anxiety. I told myself that I was being silly and that there was no reason for my heart to be hammering like I was in danger. Even if I lost the bet, he couldn't force me to do anything that I didn't want to do. Do I get to choose anything too if you lose? I questioned.
Of course.
He said.
Anything you want.
That sure sounded fun. Okay, I agreed. We have a bet. Cade's smile was absolutely predatory before he spoke.
I think dancing is going to be a lot more fun than I thought.
Chapter 10. True to his word, Cade took me back to my dorm after dinner without making any advances on me. In fact, he didn't even kiss me.
Thanks for going out with me, Lexie. I can't wait for our next date.
He beamed at me happily.
Well, good night.
Wait, I said, as he started to turn away from me. He turned back to face me.
Yes.
I moved closer to him and began to lean in to kiss him, but he shifted back.
You have to ask me for that.
What? I asked in confusion.
You have to ask me to kiss you, but you'll lose the bet if you do.
He explained. What? I exclaimed in dismay. Kissing is part of it too? You never said that.
Other things, Lexie. Kissing is the start of other things, so it's part of the bet.
I frowned at him. How do you expect us to date without kissing?
Well, Lexie, I expect us to enjoy each other's company and engage in conversation. And of course, we'll have dancing.
He added with a smirk.
Unless that's not fun enough for you.
He questioned in a mocking tone. I glared at him before speaking in a taunting tone. Oh, it's going to be fun, all right. Just you wait.
Oh, I can.
He retorted confidently.
I'm not so sure that you can, though. You just want sex from me, and I don't know how long you can last without it.
He laughed at the death glare I was now directing at him. I can hold out longer than you, I told him tersely.
We'll see,
He replied.
Good night.
Good night, I ground out in annoyance. It wasn't until later that I realized how prudent Cade was being. Considering how fast we usually went from kissing to making out, he was right that kissing was the start of other things for us. Maybe it was good that this silly bet was going to make us slow down and get our bearings. I hadn't thought about us as anything except sex partners, but our relationship should be based on more than that if we were dating. Just sitting and talking with him at dinner had been nice. I'd learned something new about him during our conversation about music, and I knew that we still had a lot to learn about each other. We hadn't really had any personal conversations during the past 2 years. I was starting to become curious about his life in California, and I decided to ask him about it the next time we talked. Morgan dared to call me, sounding ecstatic. Cade says you're dating. I knew it would happen. I'm so glad you're giving him a chance. That's way too much enthusiasm, even for you, I told her dryly. Sorry, she said, but I'm so happy for you. I huffed out an amused breath. Okay, but don't get ahead of yourself. We've only gone on one real date so far. Well, tell me about it, she urged. I did, and she laughed about our bet. What a great way to get him to go dancing. That's very clever of you. The bet was actually his idea. Maybe he secretly wants to go dancing, I suggested jokingly. Yeah, maybe you'll find out he's a great dancer and it'll be like in Footloose. Wouldn't that be awesome? She gushed. I doubt he can dance like that, especially since he told me that guys aren't into dancing. Maybe you'll get him into dancing. Anyway, what do you get if you win the bet? She questioned. Anything I want, I replied. There was a pause as she digested this. So, that means he gets anything he wants if you lose? Like anything? No limits. Once again, my stomach dipped like I was on a roller coaster. Yeah, that was what we agreed on. And he didn't even give you a hint of what he wants, she pressed. No, I answered. But why does this sound like something out of 50 Shades of Grey? She interjected. My stomach plunged even more crazily. It's not. I mean, you don't really think it's something like that, do you? Well, she hedged uncomfortably. Did he seem like he could be into that? When you slept with him, was he dominating? Not really, I replied, but there was now a queasy feeling in my stomach as I thought about him ordering me to keep my hands on the wheel. While that had been arousing, I didn't think I'd want to try actual bondage. Okay, so it's probably not even anything sexual, Morgan tried to assure me, and then hurried on. What do you want from him if you win? That was a good question. I don't know. I haven't thought of anything yet. Think of something embarrassing, she urged. I laughed. Okay, embarrassing Cade sounds fun. I've actually never seen him get embarrassed. Maybe have him serenade you in public, she suggested. That'll embarrass me too, I protested. But it would be so romantic, she gushed. That's your thing, not mine, I told her. What do you have against romance? She asked. Nothing, I said. I just don't need it. I like to keep things more casual. Okay, she said, obviously not understanding my preference. I'm just glad you're dating. Anyway, how have you been? I inquired. Good, she replied. But I miss you. It sucks that you're not here with me for senior year. I do kind of miss high school, I admitted. I felt really lonely when I first got here, but I'm starting to get used to it. And now you have Cade to keep you company, she said, bringing him into the conversation again. Yeah, and my roommate, I added, determined to talk about something else. She's really nice. Katie wasn't back yet from her date with her boyfriend. She had told me that they were taking advantage of seeing each other as much as possible now before they became swamped with homework and studying. It sounded like they were both diligent students. I wondered if Cade was taking college as seriously, or if he didn't care, since he already had a guaranteed job at his dad's company. He had done his share of work on the one project we had done together in high school, so I knew that he was capable of getting good grades. I was dismayed to realize that my thoughts had drifted to Cade again, and I launched into telling Morgan about how long Katie had been with her boyfriend. And she'd never even gone to a party without him before, I continued. But she had fun. I'm going to have to make sure that I spend girl time with her. Yeah, she needs friends too, she agreed. But don't forget about your friend back home. I could never forget about you, I told her sincerely. You saved high school for me. I would have been alone at Eastland without you. You would have made friends, she said, and I know you'll make friends at college. I know a lot of times people drift apart after high school, and I'm a whole year behind you. That'll never happen, I declared. I'm gonna be a bridesmaid in your wedding, and I'll be babysitting your kids one day. Do you really think he'll marry me? She asked dreamily. Yes, I answered. He was in love with you even before you got together, and now you guys are so in love that it's sickening, I teased. I actually get goosebumps when I imagine marrying him, she confessed. It wasn't like that when I used to fantasize about marrying Logan. It was like a daydream about a handsome prince in a fairy tale. It sounds like your feelings for Blaine are a lot more intense, I remarked. They are, she confirmed. I can't believe it took me so long to realize how I felt about him. I'm glad you did, I said. I hope Logan and Julia figure out their relationship too. They're next, she predicted. Now that you and Cade are back together, it'll be their turn to realize they're in love too. The way she phrased that made me uncomfortable. Wait. I hope you're not saying that Cade and I are… Well, of course you're in love, she interjected. Why else would you wait for him for 2 years? I wasn't waiting for him, I argued. I just wasn't interested in dating anyone. Except for Cade, she stated. You weren't interested in anyone but him, and he wasn't interested in anyone else but you. That's love. No, I denied. That's you thinking that everyone is in love like you are. You're projecting your own experience onto the rest of us. But we're all different. Just because you want me to be in love doesn't mean that I am. Well, how do you feel about Cade? She questioned. I don't know, I replied. Attracted to him, obviously, since I slept with him. But beyond that, I don't know. I'm just going to wait and see how it goes this time. I'm not expecting anything. What do you mean? She asked. What aren't you expecting? Anything, I reiterated. As in, not anything at all. If it ends tomorrow, I'll be fine with it. She sighed. No, you won't be. But yeah, I see that he's still got a long way to go to get you to trust him again. I guess he deserves it. Definitely think of something embarrassing for him to do when he loses that bet. Oh, I will, I promised, with every intention of coming up with something that would make him squirm. Chapter 11. I still hadn't come up with any good ideas by the following day. I'd had an incredibly embarrassing conversation with Logan, which I was glad had taken place over the phone. I had called him to get his input after hanging up with Morgan, and I had told him about my date with Cade and our bet. What do you think I should have him do if he loses? It can be anything, but I can't think of what to ask for.
Well, what are your fantasies? You don't need to tell me,
He hastened to add.
Just think about what you want.
His words stirred up the unease that I had felt earlier when I had been discussing the possibilities with Morgan. Do you really think he'll want something sexual? I asked worriedly.
Does that frighten you?
Logan questioned in concern.
If he's been too rough with you, then
No, I cut in quickly, not wanting him to get the wrong impression of Cade. No, he hasn't. But what if he has some fantasy that's,
too kinky for you?
he surmised. Yeah, I admitted.
You don't have to do it,
He said.
not unless you want to. You won't know until you hear what it is. It might be something you'll both enjoy, but…
Like what? I interrupted him to ask. What kind of kinky stuff? I mean, I know about the 50 Shades stuff, and I just don't think that I would want to do that.
Kinky doesn't necessarily have to mean bondage,
He replied.
there are lots of other ways to play erotic games.
Like how? I questioned, before the memory of Julia telling him to try to keep his concentration on his research surfaced in my mind. I now knew what kind of game they had been playing, because I saw the similarity to Cade telling me to keep my hands on the wheel. I suddenly felt very uncomfortable discussing this with Logan. He, however, answered my question by revealing another thing that I probably shouldn't have been privy to.
I once played a game like that with someone. I had to be her servant for the day and do her bidding. Cook her meals, wash the dishes, paint her toenails, things like that.
Oh, I responded, relaxing before becoming confused about what was so sexual about that. Um, that was an erotic game?
I had to be naked all day.
He stated. I immediately pictured myself doing Cade's bidding naked. Oh, that doesn't sound so bad. Logan responded with a knowing laugh, and intense embarrassment flooded through me. Even though he had basically admitted that he enjoyed playing games like that himself, I felt mortified to realize that I was also turned on by the thought of being Cade's naked servant, and that I would acquiesce to that if he decided it was the price for losing the bet.
It doesn't sound so bad to have Cade serving you naked.
Logan teased, but I could hear by the amusement in his voice that he knew exactly what I had been thinking. When I flipped the roles in my mind, though, I found the idea of Cade being my naked servant arousing as well. That made me feel less embarrassed about being turned on by the previous scenario. Still, I changed the subject. Morgan says that I should make him serenade me in public.
Naked?
Logan asked, with barely suppressed mirth. No, not everything is about sex,
I was talking about nudity.
he remarked.
You're the one who's making it all about sex.
Now he and Cade had both accused me of being obsessed with sex. It was ironic how the tables had turned. In the past, I had been the one suspecting that Cade only wanted sex, and I had still been assuming that when I decided to have a one-night stand with him. How had I turned out to be the pervert? Nudity leads to sex, I retorted defensively.
Really?
Logan inquired.
So if I'm naked the next time you see me, you'll have sex with me?
Okay, it doesn't always lead to sex, I amended. But if it's your boyfriend or girlfriend... I trailed off as something occurred to me. Are you saying you didn't have sex when you played that serving game?
Eventually.
He replied. So it was about the sex, I exclaimed triumphantly.
No, it was about the anticipation.
He corrected me.
About prolonging the anticipation.
Okay, I get it, I said hastily, once again feeling uncomfortable about discussing this. But there will be no nudity involved. I need something embarrassing, but not indecent. Any ideas?
No,
He stated.
I don't spend my time thinking about ways to embarrass people.
I didn't either, so I was left without a plan for when Cade lost the bet. Maybe I would just have him be my servant for the day, with clothes on. My lack of ideas didn't matter anyway, because Cade wasn't the one who lost the bet. Chapter 12. You did what? I questioned in astonishment.
I signed us up for ballroom dancing.
He repeated. Who are you and what have you done with Cade? He smirked in response.
I'm not as predictable as you assumed I was.
That was an understatement. Never in a million years would I have predicted that he would even spare a thought to ballroom dancing, let alone participate in it. Why would you sign us up for that?
You don't want to take ballroom dancing?
He mocked me.
I thought you loved to dance.
So it was just a way for him to undermine my assertion that dancing was fun. He wanted to make me say something negative about it and prove that I wasn't as enthusiastic about it as I claimed. This plan was about to backfire on him, though. While I wouldn't have chosen to take formal dancing classes, I had no objections to them, and it would be fun to see Cade suffer through them. I do, I said. When's our first class? His smile didn't falter.
This Thursday at 7.
Great, I exclaimed with exaggerated enthusiasm. I can't wait,
Me either.
he said, and smirked at me again. My evenings preceding Thursday were spent doing homework. I also called Lauren to get a fresh perspective on my situation, and also to ask if she had any ideas on embarrassing Cade if he lost the bet. I felt more comfortable speaking to Lauren about Cade now that we were no longer in high school. Not that I had really worried about her gossiping, since she didn't seem to be as prone to it as the rest of Morgan's friends. Still, high school had been a much smaller social environment, and I had been more paranoid about people's judgment on my relationship with my stepbrother. Lauren had always seemed cooler and more mature than the rest of us, but I had still been wary of revealing too much to her. Now my reservations about talking openly to her had faded. She was not surprised to hear that I was dating Cade. Morgan told me about their secret plan for Cade to follow you to college, she confessed. I told her you'd be mad, but she said you'd thank her later. I haven't thanked her yet, I remarked dryly. But I'm not mad anymore. So, how is it being with him after such a long break? She asked. Different, I replied. Not the same as when we were in high school. But it's also kind of like we continued from where we left off before. That surprises me, she said. You make it sound so natural. I can't imagine trying to get back together with any of my ex-boyfriends without there being some awkwardness. There's just too much distance between us now. I realized that I had never felt that awkward distance with Cade. I'd felt furious and hurt, frustrated and reluctantly attracted to him, exasperated with him, and even a bit of affection toward him when I saw him with Noah. But I never felt distant from him, and it stunned me to realize that. I had been extremely upset with him when we broke up, and we had been living on opposite sides of the country for 2 years, so there should have been a widening distance between us. Yet there wasn't. We had never been uncomfortable or awkward with each other. From the beginning of our interactions, there had never been any reserve or hesitation between us. We had frequently been confrontational, often intensely attracted, and sometimes warm and playful, but never distant. Now that I thought about it, it was astonishing how easily we had resumed our relationship, and it did feel like a continuation rather than starting over. As much as I had told myself that Cade could have been any attractive guy I wanted to have a one-night stand with, the truth was that I couldn't imagine actually having sex with any other guy. It certainly wouldn't have been as easy to take my clothes off and give in to passion with another guy. How are things going with your boyfriend? I asked Lauren, even as I reeled from my realizations about my feelings for Cade. All right, she said. I don't know, she amended. It's so exciting before you know for sure if he likes you, but then it's like the novelty wears off too fast once you start dating. Do you think it's, you know, the sex? I questioned awkwardly. Maybe you haven't found anyone who rocks your world, I finished lamely, unable to put into words how hot, exciting, and addictive sex could be with the right person. Wait, did I just think that Cade was the right person for me? I know I haven't, Lauren agreed, because I probably would have had sex with the guy if I had. As her words sank into my brain, they distracted me away from thoughts of Cade. You haven't had sex? No, she confirmed. Like I said, the pre-dating stage is the most exciting for me. By the end of our first date, I'm already not feeling it anymore. I'm not going to sleep with a guy if I'm not excited about it. Otherwise, what's the point? I thought about how I'd had the opposite problem with Cade. I'd had to hold myself back from having sex with him too soon. I was glad that it hadn't happened in high school, but I had barely lasted a week this time around. Our relationship seemed to be going in reverse now. We'd started with sex, and were now attempting to date. You're right, I told Lauren. There's no point in sleeping with a guy you're not into. Good for you for not giving in to peer pressure. Her tone was laced with amusement when she spoke.
I've never had a problem with that. I've always been more of an observer than a participant.
She had described herself accurately, and I had a sudden whim to bring her into the action. Why don't you come visit me here one weekend before school gets crazy? There are lots of parties going on right now, and you never know. You might meet someone exciting.
That's actually a good idea, she said. Maybe a long-distance relationship is what I need. It might keep the excitement going longer. Would this weekend be good for you?
Sure, I agreed. I'll get a sleeping bag and you can take my bed.
No offense, Lexie, but I'm not going to be crammed into your dorm. I'll stay at a hotel.
I smiled ruefully. I still sometimes forgot that my friends were rich. Since leaving behind the mansion that I had lived in for the past 2 years, I had started to feel like a regular person again. This kind of lifestyle was familiar to me, and I had fallen back into it easily. Lauren, however, had grown up in luxury and would prefer a fancy hotel to a normal-sized dorm room. She might stay at an even more expensive place than the hotel where Cade and I had spent the night. Best not to let my thoughts go there, but my mind had been drifting back to that more often with every day that passed without any physical contact with Cade. I was already wanting more sex with him, and the only thing that stopped me from suggesting it to him was our stupid bet. Hey, I said to Lauren, do you have any ideas for embarrassing someone? After I explained the bet to her, she actually had some suggestions.
I've seen people had to wear ridiculous costumes after losing a bet, or stand by the side of the road holding embarrassing signs, usually involving something about honk if you think this or that. Guys have shown up in class wearing miniskirts and high heels. I've even seen a guy walking around campus in a thong.
Wow, those are all good. Morgan only came up with having him serenade me in public, and Logan—
What did Logan suggest?
She asked curiously after I trailed off. That one's kind of private.
Ooh, it's something sexual, she exclaimed. I won't tell anyone, she promised. I'm just curious because, well, since I'm lacking in experience.
She sounded hesitant, and that was something I had never heard from her before, so I relented. Well, he had the idea of me making him my naked servant for the day.
Like a sex slave?
She questioned in surprise. No, I practically shouted as my face flamed. Like a maid washing dishes and stuff, only naked.
Okay.
She was clearly bewildered by that idea, and I felt like an even bigger pervert than I had while having that conversation with Logan. It's another way to embarrass him, I lied, trying to make it sound less perverted. Oh, she responded, still sounding uncertain. But I like your ideas better, I told her, desperately trying to move past that mortifying topic.
I'll find a ridiculous costume for him to wear. What if you lose the bet? She queried.
My embarrassment quadrupled as I imagined myself as Cade's naked servant. That idea had corrupted my mind, and I couldn't seem to get it out of my brain. I'm not going to lose the bet, I declared. My voice must have betrayed my nervous excitement because Lauren definitely picked up on it.
Oh boy, you're in trouble, aren't you?
You have no idea, I admitted. But we're taking ballroom dancing lessons, so that's safe, right? I mean, it's all formal and everything.
And romantic, she remarked.
Having him sweep you around the dance floor like you're in a romantic movie. Yeah, there's nothing at all seductive about that. I hate to say it, but it sounds like he knows how to play this game better than you. We'll see about that, I huffed. Just wait until I pull out my dirty dancing moves. Lauren laughed at me. You know how to dirty dance? She questioned doubtfully. Well, I saw the movie, and I'm sure that I could pick up the moves if I watched it again.
I can't wait to see that.
she said. "It's gonna be a fun weekend. I'll call you on Friday after I check into the hotel." After I got off the phone with her, I looked up the scene in the movie where Baby learns how to dirty dance. Thinking about doing that with Cade only made me start imagining us moving from suggestive dance moves to actually grinding our pelvises together before removing the barrier of our clothes. I wondered if Cade was having sexual thoughts about me too. Surely he would be the one to give in first. He had been trying to seduce me from the start. When I thought back to high school, I remembered that it had always been him making the first move. He wouldn't be able to hold out for very long before he made a move on me again. I had lived without sex for years before having it with Cade, and I could easily live without it again. Winning this bet should be easy for me. Chapter 13. There was only one other couple close to our age in our ballroom dancing class, and they were getting married. Cade was the one who asked them why they were taking this class, and the girl replied that they were preparing for their wedding. They wanted to impress their guests with their first dance, and the waltz we were learning was what they were planning to use. After the girl inquired into why we were taking the class, Cade smirked at me before replying to her.
Lexie says she won't have sex with me until I learn how to dance.
The couple laughed as I turned red in embarrassment. They laughed even harder when I glared at Cade. One of the instructors came over to see what was so funny, and it happened to be the male instructor, which increased my humiliation. Still laughing, the guy from the other couple informed him that Cade had the ultimate motivation for learning to dance.
Yes,
Cade declared loudly before I could stalk away.
love. I love you, Lexie.
The class erupted in cheers as I gaped at Cade. Was this just for show? He wasn't serious, was he? Maybe this was part of his ploy to win the bet. He stepped closer to me, his intense gaze locked on mine.
I mean it.
He told me in a quiet tone that conveyed seriousness. Okay, on that note, we'll wish you a good week. The female instructor projected her voice from across the room. You've made a great start. Keep practicing your steps at home, and we'll see you next time. I broke eye contact with Cade and followed the rest of the class outside into the parking lot. Cade took hold of my hand, but I snatched it away. What the hell was that? I demanded, trying to hold on to my anger while feeling completely disconcerted.
The truth,
He stated. You love me? I questioned in disbelief.
yes.
He said.
I think I fell in love with you on our first date, but I didn't realize it until months after we broke up.
You don't love me, I argued.
I do.
He insisted.
Why would I wait for you all this time if I didn't love you?
How do I know if you really waited? Even as I asked the question, I felt like I was grasping at straws. Deep down, on some instinctive level, I believed him.
You can ask my mom, and I can show you my Facebook chats. I saved all my private messages from girls. If you still don't believe me, I'll prove it to you by waiting as long as you want. Even if you don't have sex with me for another 2 years, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still your boyfriend, no matter what.
Why are you doing this? I exclaimed.
Why am I telling you that I love you?
He questioned with a perplexed expression. Yes. Why? Every time I think I have things figured out, you confuse me again. It was supposed to be just sex, but then you talked me into dating you, and now you're saying you love me. I don't know what to think anymore.
Yes, you do.
He replied in a low, sensual tone.
You know how you feel about me, but you just haven't accepted it yet.
I stalked around to the passenger side of his car in agitation. You're impossible. I can't handle any more of this tonight. Just drive me back to my dorm.
Okay?
He agreed and unlocked the car. I was tense during the silent ride back to campus, while Cade appeared calm and confident. Since we lived in the same building, he accompanied me inside. When I decided to take the stairs to get away from him, he followed me.
What are you doing?
I snapped. You can't walk up to the 8th floor.
I actually can,
He retorted.
but I'll take the elevator up from whatever floor you get on it.
I'm not taking the elevator, I told him, even though I had been planning to take it from the 2nd floor.
Just take the elevator,
He urged.
I understand if you need space, and I won't try to talk to you. There's no way I can leave you to walk up these empty stairwells by yourself, though. It's just too dangerous. Remember what I told you about attackers?
He had showed me more than told me. I certainly remembered that demonstration, but I ignored him and kept walking up the stairs. I half expected him to grab me in another show of how an attacker could overpower me, but he just walked beside me as my apparent bodyguard. I regretted my stubbornness when I was already panting after the 2nd flight of stairs. To make matters worse, Cade wasn't out of breath.
Basketball conditioning,
He informed me, after I cast a resentful sideways glance at him.
plus I did a lot of extra workouts on my own. I had to do something with all my sexual frustration. Even masturbating so many times a day wasn't enough, so I ran to exhaust my body.
I needed all my breath to make it up the 3rd flight of stairs, so I couldn't say anything in response. Cade took advantage of that and continued talking.
Sometimes I fantasized about you making the first move on me because you wanted me so much, but I didn't think it would actually happen. You made my fantasy come true, Lexie, and I want to make all your fantasies come true too.
I stopped on the landing to catch my breath, but I was also breathless from the words he had spoken. It was more than his physical effect on me this time. My mind was overwhelmed with the idea that he meant everything he said.
I liked it better when I was the cause of your heavy breathing, but this is fun too.
He remarked. I expected to see a smirk on his face after that quip, but there was understanding in his eyes.
Let's take the elevator before you pass out.
He urged, and opened the door to the hallway. Admitting defeat to myself, if not speaking it aloud to him, I stepped through the doorway and walked toward the elevator. Cade made no comment on my capitulation, and he remained silent as we rode up to my floor. He walked me to my door and only spoke 2 words before taking his leave.
Good night, Lexie.
Good night, I responded without looking at him. Katie was in the room doing homework, but she set it aside to ask about my date with Cade. I told her about the class and the couple that was getting married, but I said nothing about what had occurred with Cade. She still had a dreamy look on her face like I had described an incredibly romantic date. I grabbed my things and left the room to go take a shower. The water washed away the sweat from my exertion of climbing all those stairs, but it did nothing to calm me down. I couldn't stop thinking about Cade, and I gave up on trying to sleep after tossing and turning for a couple of hours. Katie was fast asleep as I got dressed in the dark and crept out of our room. Cade answered the door wearing only a pair of boxer shorts, but he appeared to be wide awake, too. It didn't look like I had woken him.
Yes?
He inquired, like he didn't know exactly why I was there. His lips twitched, though, like he was holding back a smirk. I scowled at him irritably. Kiss me, damn it. His smile broke free then.
What took you so long?
He teased. Shut up, I grumbled, before he swooped in to take me in his arms. It wasn't until the morning that I found out that Cade had gotten rid of his roommate by paying for him to stay overnight at a hotel.
I had a feeling you might need to work off some sexual frustration,
He said, and smirked at me. My face flamed with the memory of how much I had moaned last night. I hadn't even given a thought to Cade's roommate at the time. You were that damned sure of yourself? I demanded, contrarily annoyed with him and relieved that he had spared me embarrassment from his roommate.
Like I said, your body always likes me before you do,
He replied.
and now I know that it likes me a lot, which is why you've lost the bet.
I stiffened at that statement, but crossed my arms across my bare chest in an effort to hide my apprehension. So what do I have to do now? A slow, predatory smile crept across his face as he watched me.
Anything I want,
He said. Both fear and excitement shot through me, and my nipples hardened in arousal. Which is? I asked in an unsteady voice. His gaze intensified.
Does that turn you on?
No, I lied as I shifted my gaze away from him.
It does.
He said, his own voice roughening with arousal.
What do you think I'm going to have you do?
I don't know. Just tell me what it is. He circled around behind me and pulled me back against him.
Tell me what you've been imagining.
He demanded huskily as he placed his hand between my legs and began to tease that spot where my pleasure was concentrated. He wouldn't give me enough pressure to get me where I wanted to go until I told him what I had been thinking, and by that time, I was too far gone to come up with a lie. Naked servant, I gasped.
Yeah?
He breathed into my ear.
Doing what, exactly?
Dishes, cooking. Oh, yes,
More fun that way.
he agreed. I was now beyond talking, and he postponed the rest of the conversation until later. He took me by surprise when he brought it up again after we were both dressed.
Now,
He said as he sat down at the end of his bed.
about the terms of our bet. Come here.
I stared at him as I slowly approached him. I had thought that we were both sated at the moment, so I hadn't expected him to want anything sexual right now. I was truly apprehensive this time, because I no longer had arousal to distract me. What if he wanted something I didn't want to do? Would this be the end of our relationship? When I stopped before him, he drew out the tension as he regarded me with one of his neutral, unreadable expressions.
Do you trust me?
He finally asked. Yes, I answered, and waited anxiously for him to tell me what he wanted.
Good.
He said.
Go change into a skirt and a blouse that buttons all the way down the front. Don't wear panties. I'll be down soon.
I relaxed after hearing these instructions. Okay, but Katie is probably there. Should I come back up here?
No,
He replied.
I'm taking you somewhere.
Where? I asked.
Wherever I want. Remember, I told you it would be at my discretion, and you agreed to it. Now go get ready.
I assumed that he was expecting his roommate back, so he was taking me to a hotel. So far, this was similar to our previous hotel rendezvous, right down to the no panties request. The only difference was that it was daytime. I was already late for class, and I decided to just skip it altogether. I discovered that Katie wasn't in our room, so she must have had a class. Cade disregarded this information when he came down to get me, and we went out to his car. After we were seated, he pulled a blindfold out of the glove compartment.
Put on your seatbelt first.
He commanded. I sat frozen in my seat. Why do you have a blindfold?
I bought it for you.
He answered. Why? I questioned anxiously. His answer wasn't reassuring.
Because I want you to wear it.
Why? I asked. For what reason?
You'll find out.
He told me enigmatically. Cade, I began hesitantly. I don't know what you're into, but
You said that you trust me,
he interjected.
so put your seatbelt on and let's get going. I'm missing class for this, and I know that you are too. I'm expecting you to follow through on your promise, but you can stop if things get too intense for you. I hope you won't quit before we've even started, though.
My heart constricted at his words. Was he threatening to break up with me? That thought spurred me into action, and I strapped myself in with the seatbelt. As I put on the blindfold he handed me, I desperately hoped that he wasn't into anything too kinky, and that we could still be together. He secured the blindfold snugly over my eyes, obviously making sure that I couldn't peek out from beneath it. I immediately felt vulnerable, and I worried that he would want to restrain my hands next. He said nothing, but I heard the engine start. When the car began to move, I relaxed slightly.
I'm going to check now if you're wearing panties,
Cade warned me. I felt his hand on my leg, slipping up under my skirt and moving steadily up to touch me between my legs. I was suddenly very aroused again, but he quickly removed his hand after confirming that I had followed his instructions.
Good girl,
He said. What would have happened if I was wearing panties? I asked with a mixture of curiosity and wickedness.
try it sometime and you'll find out.
What does that mean? I questioned in frustration.
It means that's a game for another day. Now be quiet and pay attention. I don't need you getting startled and screaming your head off in the middle of traffic.
I stiffened in my seat. I'd been so focused on Cade that I'd forgotten about everyone else. People can see me, I exclaimed in horror.
Relax.
He urged.
If anyone noticed, they probably think it's for an innocent surprise. They'll think differently if you get too loud, though.
I heard the sound of the power window and then the hiss of air. Cade, I protested.
I just cracked my window open a little. If you're quiet, nobody will know that anything is going on.
I clamped my mouth shut and steeled myself to silently withstand his sensual touches and caresses. He knew how to make me moan, so I'd have to keep tight control of myself. The blindfold somehow seemed to heighten my awareness of him, even though I couldn't see him. My ears strained to hear any movement he made, and my skin felt extra sensitive to his touch. Only he wasn't touching me. I waited in tense anticipation, but nothing happened. When the car stopped, Cade finally put his hand on my knee, and my nerves were so taut that I gasped.
Take off your seatbelt,
He said, his voice close to my ear.
I'll come around and help you out.
I'm going to walk out in public like this? I asked in alarm.
It's a surprise, Lexie. A very good surprise.
He added, and grazed his lips over my earlobe. I shivered in response, and he tugged on my earlobe gently with his teeth. That elicited a small, breathy moan from me.
Erogenous zone.
He breathed into my ear.
Good to know.
I felt him pull away and heard the sound of his car door opening. When he opened mine, I released my seatbelt, and Cade took my hand to help me out of the car. I took one careful step at a time as he guided me with his arm around my waist. I was incredibly self-conscious as I imagined people staring at me.
Stop here,
Cade told me.
Wait a minute.
I stood awkwardly for a very short time before he returned to resume guiding me forward. After he again told me to stop, I distinctly heard the sound of a door shutting. Where are we? I asked in bewilderment. We hadn't walked far enough to have moved through a lobby and down a hotel hallway.
Take off the blindfold,
He said. I hesitated in surprise before complying. Cade stood before me in the entryway of a house. There was a narrow table along the wall to my left. My gaze flitted back to Cade. Whose house is this?
It's my condo,
He replied.
I'm renting it.
You're moving out of your dorm? I questioned.
Yes, I knew I wouldn't be able to live with a roommate.
A short laugh burst out of me along with most of my tension. Why am I even surprised? He smiled in response, but something else suddenly occurred to me. Wait, so this was really about a surprise? That's what the blindfold was about?
I did want to surprise you.
He confirmed. Then why do you insist on no panties? I exclaimed. What was all that stuff about warning me to be quiet so no one would hear me? He shrugged.
You seem to want it to be sexual.
Heat swept through me, and I wasn't entirely sure if it was caused more by embarrassment or anger. You asshole! I sputtered. Do you have any idea how freaked out I was? I thought you were into all that bondage stuff, and I didn't know if we'd even be able to stay together. He smirked.
It was fun to mess with you like that. And
his expression changed to a heated, lustful look.
It turned you on. And seeing you get turned on turned me on too. I couldn't wait to get you here and touch you like I wanted to.
Now the heat I was feeling was definitely sexual. But you're just standing there, I complained. You got me all
hot and bothered,
he supplied, with a smirk at my frustration.
I like you like that. But have patience. It's something I had to learn when we weren't together. And now it comes in handy for driving you crazy.
Well, I huffed. Maybe that will backfire on you, and I won't be in the mood anymore. He didn't rise to my challenge.
We'll see,
he said neutrally.
Now, about the terms of our bet. I want you to move in with me.
My annoyance was immediately forgotten. That's what you want? I asked him happily. Out of anything at all, that's what you picked?
Well,
he hedged.
There's more, but I didn't want to freak you out, as you put it.
My stomach sank, but I prompted him stoically. Tell me. I want to hear it. He looked torn.
This isn't how I wanted to do this. I should wait for a better time.
I knew that waiting would only make it worse. My heart was already breaking at the thought of finding out that we were incompatible. Whatever dark secret he was hesitating to reveal to me, I needed to know it now. I can't wait, I told him, trying for a teasing tone. You know I have no patience. He responded with a smile that quickly dissolved into determination.
Okay. Put the blindfold back on.
My heart began to hammer in apprehension. I had suspected that there had to be a sexual element to what he wanted, and now I had pushed him to collect on it. He had hinted that it would freak me out, so it had to be something really kinky. But I had already told him that I didn't want to try bondage. My mind whirled with anxious thoughts as he again made sure that the blindfold was secure over my eyes. He left me standing there, blindly awaiting whatever he was going to do. He hadn't removed any of my clothes or fondled me in any way, so I started to wonder if he was just playing a joke on me. Maybe he was standing back, silently laughing at me as I stood there like a fool, following his order not to move. Maybe he was waiting to see how long I would stand there and wait for him.
Okay,
I heard him say.
Take the blindfold off.
I removed it and saw him kneeling before me with a bouquet of flowers he had obviously taken out of a vase filled with water. The stems were still wet, and a few drops had dripped onto Cade's shorts.
Will you marry me, Lexie?
Yes! I exclaimed and shot forward toward him before halting. Wait, we can't get married? We just started college, and our parents will kill us, I realized. Oh my God, our parents! Cade, we're going to be in so much trouble. I can't move in with you. Your dad will have a fit. Cade smiled like he was the happiest guy on earth.
You said yes.
Yeah, but I wasn't thinking. You know we can't get married.
Your first instinct was to say yes. What does that tell you, Lexie?
I wasn't thinking, I repeated. Did you hear me, Cade? We can't get married.
Patience,
he chided me as he dropped the flowers and scooted forward to lift my skirt. My breath hitched as he leaned in between my legs. What are you doing?
Well,
he said in a soft, seductive tone.
It turns out that having my girlfriend accept my proposal makes me want to make love to her. And since I'm already down here...
All other protests died in my throat when I felt his hot, wet mouth. Chapter 14. Cade insisted on going shopping for an engagement ring. We had showered and gotten dressed after our passion was spent, but I was still bare beneath my skirt. I need to stop at my dorm and put on underwear.
Why bother? I'll just want to take them off of you again,
he remarked. I'm not going shopping without underwear on, I stated firmly.
Okay,
He relented.
we'll stop back at the dorm.
Katie was there, and Cade immediately announced to her that we had gotten engaged.
We're going shopping for her ring,
He continued, as her face lit up with happiness for us.
but we had to come back because Lexie forgot to put on underwear.
Katie's smile faltered, and her eyes widened as her face flamed with more embarrassment than mine. I glared at Cade, and he grinned at me. Katie suddenly laughed. I can see how he gets away with saying stuff like that, Lexie, she commented, obviously referring to his disarming grin. Congratulations! Wow, I'm so happy for you. Thanks, I said as she hugged me. I couldn't help feeling the glow of happiness, even with my worry about how our parents would react.
Thanks,
Cade echoed, as Katie hugged him next.
I almost stole her away from you, but she refuses to move in with me until after we get married.
You know your dad would flip out, I told him. I don't know how we're even going to tell him we're engaged. Your dad's not going to be happy about you getting engaged? Katie asked. Does he think you're too young to get married? We're not getting married until we finish college, I explained. Despite Cade's objections, I had been adamant about that. Our parents would need time to adjust to the idea, and I wanted to make sure that we would last long term. If we were still together in 4 years, that would prove that we had staying power. Our situation is complicated, I told Katie.
It doesn't feel complicated,
Cade said. No, it doesn't, I admitted. Not between the two of us. When it was just us, everything felt natural and easy. I quickly grabbed a pair of underwear and shoved them into my purse. I'll be right back. Cade rolled his eyes.
I'm sure your roommate has seen you get dressed before, and so have I. We'll turn our backs if it makes you feel better.
Katie immediately did, and Cade promptly followed suit. I quickly stepped into the panties and pulled them up. Ready, I declared. They both turned to look at me, Katie with a slight flush and Cade with a smirk.
She thought I was lying about you forgetting to put on underwear.
I didn't forget, I snapped, before realizing that sounded worse. Let's go, I commanded as Cade laughed. I marched past him and yanked open the door. He followed me into the hallway.
I'm so glad you came back for your underwear,
he commented, his voice brimming with mirth. Shut up, I muttered. It's your turn to be quiet.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Should I put on the blindfold?
He asked, pitching his voice louder as we approached a small group of students waiting in front of the elevator. One of the guys snickered, but his friend tried to fist bump me.
A woman in charge! I like it. Get your own,
Cade told him.
This one is mine.
As if I hadn't been embarrassed enough already that day, one of the girls ventured to ask me a question after we all got on the elevator. So, you're like a dominatrix?
Only with me,
Cade said.
You'll have to get your own too.
No, she protested, blushing in embarrassment. I was just wondering what kind of stuff she does. Like, she ties you up and stuff? Does she spank you too? Does it hurt or do you like it?
It hurts so good,
Cade declared, as my face turned scarlet. I was the first one off the elevator, and Cade had to hurry to catch up with me. Don't talk, I ground out through gritted teeth. He turned his head and called out,
She likes to gag me too.
Don't tempt me, I warned him.
I live to tempt you,
he replied breezily. His offhand comment hit a nerve. Do you think it's just the allure of forbidden fruit?
What?
He questioned in confusion. You and me, I clarified. Do you think we're so tempted just because it's forbidden?
Where the fuck did you get that idea?
He snapped. Logan suggested it once, and it makes sense because,
fuck Logan,
he swore.
He doesn't know shit about us. I didn't ask you to marry me because you're forbidden.
He halted and spun toward me.
I love you, Lexie. Do you get that? I love you. And you fucking love me too, because I saw joy on your face when I asked you to marry me. That was real and true, and it has nothing to do with any psychological bullshit about forbidden fruit.
His impassioned declaration sent a surge of emotion through me, and it burst forth from me. I love you, I said in wonder, realizing it in that moment. His eyes lit up with happiness, and his smile was the bright, warm one that I could bask in forever. I love you, I repeated giddily.
About damn time.
He tried to joke casually, but he was overflowing with happiness and impulsively embraced me and spun me around. Our kiss was tender and sweet, and we held hands as we walked to his car. It was like a romantic dream that I never wanted to wake from as we drove off to pick out an engagement ring. Epilogue. If your dad could see you now, my mom said emotionally as she gazed at me in my wedding dress. It had been so long since she made a comment like that, but there was more happiness in the moment than sadness. My dad would always hold a special place in my heart, and today, I also wore the inexpensive ring he had bought for my mom and promised to replace with a diamond engagement ring one day. That was my something old, and it also honored my dad. The black Tahitian pearls Robert had given me adorned my neck in honor of both my stepfather and his deceased daughter. He would be walking me down the aisle, which was a milestone he never reached with Courtney. She would symbolically be part of this ceremony, but both his sons would be vital participants. Noah was the ring bearer, and Cade was my groom. It had been a rocky road to acceptance for us from our parents, and a rocky start for our relationship, but we had made it through to this day when we would celebrate our love with our friends and family. Morgan was my maid of honor, and she was in her romantic element. I suspected that her excitement was partly due to imagining her own wedding as she prepared for mine. She and Blaine had recently gotten engaged, and they had set a date for next summer. This news had surprised no one, as we had all been expecting to hear an announcement from them, since they had been together so long. The romance that had surprised me when it happened was between Lauren and Miles. She had come to visit me at college on the day I happened to get engaged, and I had regretfully told Cade that I had promised her I'd take her to parties that weekend. Cade had been fine with it, though, so I had called Logan like I had when I decided to take Katie to a party. I'd also wanted to tell him in person about getting engaged with Cade. When Lauren and I met up with him at his apartment, his roommate was immediately smitten with Lauren. He didn't leave her side at the party, but I warned her about him being a player after we left. She apparently ignored my warning, but Miles fell for her really hard. She was no longer a virgin, and Miles was no longer a player. They were still a couple, and he was her date at my wedding. She was also one of my bridesmaids, along with Katie. Astonishingly, Cade had asked Logan to be his best man. They had become more friendly after Cade stopped seeing him as a rival for my affections, but it was wonderful of Cade to ask him, even though he had probably done it more for me. Julia was Logan's date, and I hoped that meant they would also make their love official one day soon. Their relationship still confused me, but at least they were still together in their own way. They were both busy with their careers, and they both traveled all over the world for them. Julia with her music performances, and Logan with his archaeological digs. Yet they were here together on this special day, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of optimism for their romance. If Cade and I had overcome all our problems, then it was likely they could too. Logan smiled at me as we prepared to line up for the procession.
It's not too late to change your mind and marry the superior Cade,
he joked. Morgan giggled. You don't know how many times you married me in my daydreams. You were like my mental Ken doll. I dressed you up in so many tuxes and put you in so many different ceremonies. We even got married at Buckingham Palace one time, and all the royal guards were our groomsmen. He regarded her with a perplexed expression.
Why would we get married at Buckingham Palace? We're not part of the royal family.
I know, silly, she replied. Fantasies don't have to make sense. It was part of my princess phase.
Princess phase?
He appeared to be appalled by the idea. Don't boys have a phase like that too? She asked. Haven't you ever fantasized about being a prince?
Good God, no,
He exclaimed.
I did fantasize about being a pirate when I was very young.
You don't look anything like a pirate, she told him. You look much more like Prince Charming. Prince Logan, I teased him. Cade's gonna love that one.
Don't you dare tell him to call me that.
But it suits you so well, I protested with mock sweetness. It does, Katie agreed innocently. You do look like a handsome prince.
Lexie,
Logan said in a threatening tone. We had to settle down because the ceremony was about to start. Logan shot me a warning look before he linked arms with Morgan. The bridesmaids and groomsmen took off in pairs until Robert and I were left alone.
I don't know how to feel,
He told me honestly. It'll be all right, I assured him. You'll see.
I hope so,
He said.
Just know that I love you both, no matter what.
We love you too, I told him. And it was true. I had grown to love Robert as a father, and now he would be my father-in-law. The music prompted us to link arms and walk down the aisle. Cade's eyes were riveted on me as we approached him, and he only briefly glanced at his dad as he handed me off to Cade. I felt everything else fall away as Cade and I gazed at each other during our marriage vows. From this moment, we were together in every way. There was no longer anything forbidden about it, and I was so happy about that. Whatever had brought us together no longer mattered, because it was love that was keeping us together. Our love may have been unconventional, but it was strong and true. For us, it was the love of a lifetime. I wasn't naive enough to think that there would be no more bumps in the road before us, but I was happy to travel it with Cade. There was no one else I'd rather spend my life with, and I was excited to join my life with his. Cade was like no one else I'd met in my life, and he had put me through a full spectrum of emotions. He had annoyed me, infuriated me, broken my heart, driven me crazy with lust, embarrassed me, surprised me, loved me like no one else, exasperated me, touched my heart, and now he had married me. If nothing else, I knew that I would never have a dull moment with him.
You may now kiss the bride,
The preacher said. Our first unforbidden kiss was brief, but even more potent for me than all the ones that came before. I was heady with the knowledge that I was now kissing my husband. I didn't know that it had the same effect on Cade until he whispered it to me right before we walked out of the church.
I can't wait to be alone with my wife.
My body had liked him before I did, and it still liked him just as much as it ever had. My plan to get him out of my system had been destined for failure because my attraction to him hadn't waned at all. He could still ignite a fire within me with a few words or a heated glance. My body still craved his touch, but the rest of me had caught up and desired his company. I had fun with him, and I liked that better than feeling like a princess. Yet I felt exactly like one when Cade and I took the floor for our first dance. The dancing lessons had paid off, and our movements were fluid and graceful as we danced in sync to the simple waltz we had first learned. There were delighted exclamations from some of our female guests as we swept past them.
Do you love me now that I can dance?
Cade quipped. Only when you don't step on my toes, I retorted.
I'm just playing footsie with you, he said. You know I just got into dancing for the sex.
Admit that dancing is fun, I insisted. You know you like it.
I only like you,
he retorted.
I don't even like any of these people. What the hell are they all doing here? They're keeping me from dirty dancing with you."
Cade, I protested laughingly. Hush. Someone might hear you and think that you really want them to leave.
"I do want them to leave. Then they won't witness my humiliation."
I laughed. What humiliation? I asked, thinking that he was about to make a joke. The music stopped, and Morgan began speaking into a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, Cade would like to serenade his beautiful bride."
"She told me that's what you would have picked if I lost the bet,"
he explained to me as I glanced at him in disbelief.
"I didn't tell her what you really wanted,"
he added with a smirk. Morgan approached us and handed Cade the microphone.
"Lexie,"
he said.
"This pretty much sums up how I feel about you."
Then he began to sing My Girl to me, and I thought that my heart would burst with love. When I reminisced about it afterwards, I marveled that he was the same guy I once thought was heartless. Under cover of all the thunderous applause after he sang the final note, Morgan told me that she had convinced him that he had to do something to make up for being an asshole and breaking your heart. "All is forgiven," I declared with heartfelt sincerity. "Don't tell him that," she admonished me.
"Too late,"
he said with a grin. "Now he'll be impossible," she commented with a shake of her head.
"Don't worry,"
he whispered to me after she was out of earshot.
"I'll still be your naked servant."
I groaned. "You really will be impossible, won't you?" He smirked.
"Define impossible."
"You," I said. "That's the definition of impossible."
"Well, Lexie,"
he replied, with that familiar, wicked gleam in his eyes.
"I think you can handle me just fine."
This has been Breathless, Forbidden Book 2, written by Susanna Thompson, narrated by Lauren Sweet. Copyright 2017 by Susanna Thompson. Production copyright 2018 by Susanna Thompson.